first time listening in, that this is one time of many. Hopefully it is. If you're somebody who's part of the diaspora, part of SOC, part of humanity, treats each other like human beings, etc. We're thankful and grateful for you. We do have moderators on here for a reason, because some people come on here with the intent to, make this not a safe space for us all. We don't mind questions, of course, comments and concerns, but when it comes down to ad hominem, if you don't know what ad hominem is, basically it shows a lot of cognitive dissonance and Dunning-Kruger effect, to where people cannot necessarily argue a point, so they just make fun of each other, or they don't lift each other up, or they do things to try and make people feel bad, or to say that their opinion is the end-all be-all. If that's it, then we do have moderators for a reason, and we support them, just to let you know. Thanks for being part of the community, Mrs. D Lane? Hopefully I said that correctly. How you doing, Sister Deja? And everybody who's coming on, Miss Pierce, hello. Um, is it All Things Pretty? Thanks for being part of the community. Sister Barbara, hello. Hopefully you ladies are doing well on the trip. Ali, how you doing? To everybody, we appreciate you so very much, and we're thankful for you. Up, Ghana in the house, okay. Aqua Abba at the Sin, right? We're talking about the Most High, Ginyame, there is none except. And by the way, hello to everybody, how you doing, Dawn? Hello to everybody, once again, hello. Thanks for being with us. I'm Kofi. I'm Atnai Kofi. Salam. I'm Atnai Kofi. Shalom. Um, Namaste. Ni hao. Bonjour. Je m'appelle Kofi. Ça va? Hola, mi nombre es Kofi. ¿Cómo está? Habari. Jambo. Mimi ni Kofi. Nina Franca Kutana Nawewe. We're thankful to everybody from all places in the world, all places in the globe, all platforms. Hello, how you doing, Magic? Okay. Well, yeah, somebody got to you already. Nice dress. Yeah. Before there was a such thing as dresses, and before there was a such thing as pants and all this stuff, my culture, we were okay wearing what we wear. So I'm okay still wearing what we wear. My wife, you can catch her at Bloom and Flourish, not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. Okay, BLOOM and FLOURISH. You can catch Alma over there. And if you want information on different tinctures, different things that she does as far as healing, the different things that she provides, etc. You said, what is my culture? My culture is Shwi. My culture is Ashanti. My culture is Ashanti Shwi. My culture is Mali. My culture is the original Ghana as well, if you know about it. My culture is Timbuktu. My culture is Kemet. My culture is Yashville. My culture is also Cherokee. My culture is also Taino. My culture is the original American by definition, right? The original American by definition, if you look up reference points such as Black's Law Dictionary, etc., and other more, I won't say ancient, but more ancient, if you will, dictionaries that will define an American as a copper-colored person who's indigenous to the Americas. Many different things as far as that. No, not A&D, not A&D, the letter N. So BLOOM, the letter N, then FLOURISH. Bloom and Flourish, okay? Hopefully, so bloom and flourish. So if you got bloom right, you got flourish right. Take out the A and D. Or actually, watch this. Take out the A and take out the D and just leave the N. Bloom and flourish. Actually, that's cool. I might try to remember it that way. Take out the A, take out the D, leave the N. Bloom and flourish. All right, cool. All right. So today we're going to continue talking about presidents who are setting precedent in our FAQ series, our frequently asked questions series. And we've been doing this for a little bit now, coming up on a couple months straight. If you want to catch up on it, we've got them on YouTube. We got it on our podcast, somewhat on our podcast. We've been having some issues with some devices on my end that I got to get some things done. We don't cut my hair in my culture, so thank you very much. Appreciate it. My son has never had his hair cut. I made the mistake of cutting my hair when I was trying to work for the United States government and stuff like that. It wasn't worth it. I tried to make the mistake of doing it to pastor people. It wasn't worth it. So I've decided to just keep up with my culture. If that's a problem for you, you can probably go somewhere else to where you have to do your stuff to fit in, because you have to do that 9 to 5 thing, and you have to bow down to the system, and you don't have the business and the land and things like that to where you can just do whatever you feel like. So, we do what we are called to do in our culture. How you doing, Sister Shantae? Hello. Okay, Tranny Ronnie, thanks for being part of the community. Appreciate it. Thank you for the love, Bounty. So, going back to this president's piece, before we get into all these other places, as we can see, people are already ready to go. But going back to where we were talking about these presidents who set precedent, right? No, there's nothing hard to manage at all. It just grows, right? let it grow the way that it is, right? But um, oh, I don't. Oh well, I hope that wasn't. It was. If that was. Oh, okay. I don't know if Tranny Ronnie was trying to say anything bad or anything. I think they were just asking a question about is it hard to manage, unless they said something I missed. Um, but or maybe they said something I missed. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff coming on. I trust you guys. I trust the moderators. Thank you. So going back into these presidents thing, we were talking about presidents yesterday, talking about if you believe George Washington's your first president, then you got to believe that then you got to know the first 4 out of 5 presidents were Virginia slave owners. Talking about how they keep saying God bless America, but who is God? We didn't even really get into the whole thing as far as God is. God is not even the same as Alacham. So people who use the Bible, you can't talk about God and talk about the Bible because the word God was placed in there by people who don't even believe what you believe, and all this different stuff. But we were focusing on presidents. We were talking about how Abraham Lincoln was killing natives during the Civil War, had Union soldiers going all the way over to California. How on the day of the Emancipation Proclamation in 1862, he was killing off the Lakota people at the same time, but only did it a few times and things like that. He said, are we going to open the door to the matrix? Well, Yahshua is our door, who some people call Jesus, but really that's a doorway into the kingdom. Kingdom thought, kingdom law, marital law, universal law, law of attraction, law of first mention, natural law, law of equity, things that we don't talk about or think about, right? And so those are the things that we're here to discuss. How you doing, Will? And thanks for being part of the community. So, and all these things that we're doing, we're trying to get people to recognize that we're part of a republic that is nonsensical. And if we can you know, um, treat it as what it is, it's a lot easier to come out of it. We don't have to stay in it. How you do? Did I say thanks for being part of the community, Willie, already? I think so, right? But these are things that we have to recognize. How you doing, Sister Deborah? And we're not really concerned about the things that are in reality. We like to be in this false reality, this faux reality, this fake place that tells us to be against one another, that tells us to argue and fight for shackles to remain upon us, whether they be upon our physical wrist or whether they be upon the wrist of our minds, of our spirits. We're dealing with the same thing. And so I wanted to continue to talk about presidents because really I told you, before they took down the last TikTok page and the last YouTube page, we had a whole thing just on presidents, right? And how they set precedent. And so we're dealing with this thing right now where we have to recognize that people are fighting over presidents, and if you can stop fighting over presidents, you can kind of stop fighting over Republican versus Democrat. How you doing, Sister Bree? And if you can stop fighting over Republican versus Democrat, you can stop fighting over other things like communism or the right or the left or who believes more in what or fighting feminism versus or I'm sorry, misogynist versus misandrist and all these different things that have popped up. If you can get to a place where you can realize how presidents are used to set precedent and how presidents are chosen and not voted in and how they've gotten you to, like, we'll even deal more today with more recent presidents. We kind of talked a lot about, the older presidents that kind of set things up, even going through Teddy Roosevelt and things of that nature. But I want to show you how these presidents really are just, if you know even what the term president is, if you look at the definition of a head of state, it can be a king, it can be an emperor, it can be a president, it can be a queen, etc., right? But these presidents are false kings that are underneath the real king. So we got to start at the definition of capitalism again. And thank you for being part of the community, Ebony and I missed somebody, Ebony and Good Fruit, I believe it is. So we got to make sure that we get the definition of capitalism again down. How you doing, Chef? Thanks for being part of what we're doing again today. How you doing, Sister Rhonda? If I didn't say so already, and Sister Dawn. Hey, how you doing, Boombox? How you doing? So we have to go back to this definition of capitalism. What is the definition of capitalism? So we can set this up so you can see what these people are presiding over, right? What is the president presiding over? What is this false king presiding over? How does the system work that this false king is supposed to be a representative of, right? If we have false heads of states, because you think that the president is a head of state, right? We've been told this. How you doing, Tula Blossom? And thanks for being part of the community. You too as well, Ox King. We've been presented that the president is the head of state. That's what we believe. We believe that the president is the head of state. Thanks for being part of the community, Wise. Appreciate it. But the president is part of something called capitalism. So if we find out what the definition of capitalism, and I'm not going to tell you what my working definition of capitalism is because it's pretty simple. It's a system in which the king or queen have capital, right? The king or queen is the person who has more capital than everybody else. That's how capitalism works. But somebody would say, no, that's you trying to put your sensitivity on it and things of that nature, right? Well, we could talk about the United States Corporation versus the United States of America, the non-citizen national against the false citizen under a false corporation, because technically the only corporations that have ever existed, right? Well, I won't go that far, but you get the drift, right? I could go there, but that's not the focus. The focus of what we're talking about today is the definition of capitalism. We're going to start here. The definition of capitalism, if you were to Google it right now, you would find something that's pretty close. I'm going to be off by a few words. But the definition of capitalism is that capitalism is a system in which politics and economics are used to control trade and industry. That trade and industry is wielded by private corporations and not the state. Now, a state means a country. A lot of us don't even know that. If we want to go into the corporation thing you're talking about, a lot of people don't know that when you're part of the United States of America, they're saying that there are 50 countries that have false governors that are supposed to bow down to be puppets for a false puppet king or head of state called the president, who has to make sure the same way they do in England, that they have to go to Parliament, you call it the Senate, and that we have a Supreme Court, which they have, in Parliament too, but we separate and say that it's something brand new. Even though they're just copying off of biblical principles anyways, right? And everything else, under law of commerce, UCC, all those things, right? And if you want to find out the United States is a corporation, look up look up 28 USC 3002 15A, and you will discover that the United States is in fact a corporation. Do some more research, and this is all off of government sites, right? They are stating the law. Then go look up where that corporation is located. They'll tell you it's located in the city of Washington, D.C., which is why that they won't make it a state, because if they were to make it a state, it'd have to be part of a real country. But you can't make Washington, D.C. a real country and keep your control. So, the United States Corporation has to be in a city that's not a state. It can't belong to a state. George Washington, he made it. Remember, George Washington, he created it. He a Virginia slave owner, took Virginia land, put a plantation, made it a plantation, called it Washington, D.C., right, and put a manor on the plantation, called it the White House. And so in the same place, right, and that was where the president, you think he's your first president, so if you keep him as such, your first president said that what are we going to do to make sure that we preside over the United States of America? We're going to keep chattel slavery as number one, and we're going to make sure that every president has a bunch of slaves to make sure that he served. That's the way that went. I didn't make that up. That's what actually happened. That's what we're living in still to this day. And that's why the 13th Amendment still holds a lot of power, because the 13th Amendment says that if they arrest you, as long as no person like a judge or a senator or a president or whomever who has power to be able to say that they can take you out of prison, they can put you in prison, they can put you in jail, right? These prisons are private corporations too, right? And what do these private corporations say? These private corporations say, you better work. You better work for us. So when you go to get your number 6 today at the fast food restaurant, when you go to your job, depending on what kind of uniform you're putting on, when you go to put on those Nikes and stuff like that and pay hundreds of dollars for those shoes and things of that nature, you're going to get something that was made in America. If it says made in America, more than likely, not always, but more than likely, it's part of it's being made was in prison. And that's a fact. We always talk about China. They tell you to talk about China and fight against that. What about, and that's wrong too, by the way. They shouldn't have Chinese concentration camps and prisons and stuff that they're making people make stuff in now. Well, they're doing the same thing in the United States of America. If you're wearing a lot of stuff, matter of fact, one of the things that we kind of have to just take on the chin, if you're wearing something that's made out of cotton, if you're using cotton material, they're picking cotton still. They got the prisoners out there picking them right now, singing the same songs that they were singing back then. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. And these presidents are under control. So once again, capitalism. Capitalism is what? A system in which politics and economics are used to control trade and industry. That trade and industry is wielded by private corporations and not the state. Right? The state means the country. So the state doesn't have power. Private corporations have it. Right? And what do they use? Politics and economics. Politics and economics. Your economics are being mismanaged by who? Politicians, who do the politicians work for? The private corporations and not the state, which means that everybody that works for the government has to work for private corporations. That's the way capitalism works. That is the definition of it. That is not my definition. That is the definition that they put up. The people who own the stuff, Google, who can control this and can say we can control what shows up on Google. You know, they can control. They take stuff off of Google all the time. They don't take that down. They make sure you can read that. They want to see, because when it comes to law, you have to make sure that people can find it. It might be hard to find it. It might be stuff that people don't know they're supposed to look for, but you have to make sure they can find it. You said British Trading Company trades a birthright using the stock market. Some of those things, of course. Also, too, you know, we're talking about commonwealths as well, things of that nature, for sure. Exactly, it's their network. So if you do anything concerning politics, you must first comprehend that if you think that you're voting for a position like president, even down to a position like a sheriff or a position like a council person, etc. Hello, how you doing, Naya? You must recognize that you are already mismanaging things, or you are getting mismanaged or misplaced or misrepresented information due to the fact that what? Due to the fact that the government is not in control, but private corporations are in control. Do you know that there are laws on the books that the Senate cannot just come together and make a vote on something, or come up with something to make a vote on? They have to first make sure that people who represent private corporations show up so that they can be part of the discussion. Yes, we have YouTube, we got a podcast, we have Facebook. Those are the main ones. We kind of have other ones, but I don't really use them anymore, to be honest. But we do have a bunch of things on there. If you check out, since you're on TikTok, if you go on TikTok, click on where it's, so you'll see info on TikTok. Go underneath that. That's where it says website. Click on that link, and you'll see a link tree pop up. Feel free to look up information to be able to catch up with what we're doing. And see if there's things that you even see like we're doing around the world that you'd like to participate in, or something that you're doing we can support. We'd love to be able to do it as well, right? Even speaking engagement, things like that. We try to do a bunch of things, including even right now, we're trying to be all hands on deck. The goal is to try and get some land. We didn't get as much participation as what we wanted because they took down our YouTube and TikTok channel simultaneously that time. So we had to kind of start from scratch to catch up. But there's a lot of things that we're doing and things of that nature, right? But yeah, so you have to recognize that when you're talking about voting for a president, you must first recognize what corporations are paying the president, because that is who you're voting for. How you doing, Jab? All right, that's being part of the community. So when you're talking about a president, you got to figure out what is the corporation that supports them. Thank you for the love, right? When you talk about all these presidents who set precedent, you got to figure out what is their domestic policy and what is their foreign policy. Thank you, Minister Tamara, for being on. Appreciate you. Right? Who are they working for? It's just like when you go to your job. When you go to your job, you gotta recognize when you go to your job, why do you get fired? Like if you're in customer service and you have poor customer service routinely, why will they fire you because of poor customer service? They're not firing you just because you represent you poorly. They could care less about how you represent you, as long, right? But they're more concerned about how do you represent them. The president is not here to represent you. Your governor, your mayor is not here to represent you. Now, they have a constituency, and they have to make sure the constituency thinks that it's okay to vote for them. Why? Because because they want you to believe in democracy. The problem is, though, is that there's no such thing. Well, there is a such thing as democracy. Democracy, demo, literally means a few people who live together in a small village who give you a little bit of information. Cresci, they govern you. So that actually has existed, right? Greece and Rome, very famous for it, right? But it's existed even prior to them. But democracy doesn't exist. When I say that, I mean that it's not, if you're a United States citizen instead of a sovereign, and even if you're a sovereign, you should still know this, right? But if you're talking about being a United States citizen or whatever, you must recognize that the word democracy never shows up in your Constitution. How you doing, Jared? Shalom, how you doing? Hello, thanks for being part of the community, Steve. The word democracy never shows up. See, so they're telling us that we are wrong to have faith in the kingdom of heaven. Somebody will tell me that. How dare you talk about this? It's false. It's a myth. Well, you know that it's mythical to believe that you're under democracy when it's not even in your Constitution. Like I don't know where you are, but something's off, right? If you say that I have to have faith in something that doesn't exist, but democracy is not even in your Constitution, but you have faith in it. Matter of fact, is it Madison, I believe, the fourth, well, who people call the fourth president, right? If we're saying Washington's the first, Madison made it a point to say, hear what I'm about to tell you, Madison made it a point to be argumentative and say that you guys are going too far with this whole democracy thing. The people are going to begin to believe one day that they have the rights, have a lot of rights that they don't have. So he actually argued and said, we need to tell these people the truth about democracy, or else they're going to one day think that they're running things when the reality is that they're not. That's why you have an electoral college. Thomas Jefferson did that for a reason. Thomas Jefferson didn't send you to school. He made up the school systems, and if you look up the word school, do some etymology, school or skull, etc., it's something that is it Scandinavian? I might be off on that, somewhere from that region of the planet. And when you look at that word, it actually means something that's supposed to be deceptive. And so they created school knowing that most people back in that time when they created it would not be able to afford to go. So they didn't worry about them. The people who went, they were only going to get an elementary education. So that meant that they could do elementary things and still job out to them. Then you have people that went to secondary. They could have a little bit more, but still wouldn't they'd be kind of sort of managerial. Then you have people that went and got bachelors. I know we have associates, but I'm talking about back then. So you bought and they bought and paid for bachelor's degrees, and they were for who? Eligible bachelors. So they didn't really consider women to be people that went to school. It was for men, young boys, right? And so they went and they got bachelors, right? And then from there you got what? A master's. A master's is supposed to be a teacher. There were slave owners and there were slave masters. Sometimes they were one and the same. A slave master is somebody who teaches you how to be a slave, right? And then you have people who are doctorates. They literally doctor or write out, right, new theories that really go to the same old of making sure they consider the culture of manifest destiny, white man's burden, lost cause rhetoric, doctrine of discovery. Nowhere in there is a democracy. Matter of fact, 1789 or 1791, pick choose. Some people will even say 1787, whichever one, whichever version of the Constitution you want to cape up for. When you look at these things as far as the Constitution, 17, the Constitution, look it up. How many people were allowed to vote when the Constitution came out? And thank you for being part of the community, Jimmy. And I'm sorry, I'm going to pronounce this wrong. Is it Kaylee? Kelly Mareo? I'm not sure if I said that correctly, but thank you for being part of the community. Um, right? Who was allowed to vote when this second Constitution came out? It's not the first, second. So when the second Constitution came out, who was allowed to vote? How you doing, Try kind. Kaylee. Okay, I'll try to remember that. Who 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 was allowed to vote? Thanks for being part of the community, Try kind. Who was allowed to vote when the Constitution came out? Exactly. White men, but it wasn't white men altogether. It was 6% of the population, or who they considered to be the population, right? Because natives and black folk and women weren't there. But it still left over only 6% of the population of who they said were United States of America were people that could vote. So the people who had could vote, and the people who had not couldn't. That's 6% of the population when you look at it could vote. So it's never been what you thought it is, right? It never started off as this land of the free, home of the brave. It never was that. It was never supposed to be where everybody could. That's why Madison got ticked off. Stop telling these people it's a democracy, because democracy is not even in the Constitution. We're not trying to have a democracy. Well, they started making people pay taxes. Remember, they fought against taxes, and then they started making people pay taxes because they didn't know how to make sure that they had a position to where taxes were not necessary. How you doing, Sheila? Thanks for being part of the community. No land, corporation, business equals no vote. There you go. That's a nice way of saying it. Well, we're talking about the New World Order right now because we're already breaking it down, right? You said maybe the vote counted back then. Yeah, but even with that, see the vote, even in that, right? The vote it's always been staged. Like you got to get like that's why we have to deal with these presidents who set a precedence because they set a precedent for our mindset to say, oh yeah, we've got to see they did Al Gore wrong. Now you got people Trump, Trump really won and this and that or whatever. Even if that stuff is true, who cares? It was always under control. You have an electoral college. They had decided who they wanted. Number one, but number two, go back in the day when they had a vote. They didn't have voting booths. Something as simple as a booth you can go inside and nobody could see who you were voting for. That's not how the vote started. That's a new thing. And still, if you're doing it electronically, it means that there's a system that can see who you're voting for, correct? So your vote is not really private. You're trusting that it is. And I'm not saying that everybody involved is in on this thing, but let's be honest, like there's a choice. We're going to talk about some of these things today. Oh yeah, I love allodial stuff. We could talk about allodial all day if this was another way we were going, right? But watch this. They would have everybody come out in public. All these men would come out in public, and they would basically announce who they were voting for in front of everybody. You said, but aren't we supposed to be a republic, not just a democracy? Well, we're not a democracy because on paper you're not a democracy. There is no law. There is nothing written. Now I don't know because I haven't read the constitution of every single state. But as far as what I've been told and taught, and I definitely know reading the Constitution, right? I've read a lot of state constitutions, but I've read the Constitution, right? The second Constitution and the third one too. If you know how to read the Constitution, it's two constitutions in one, but that's a whole other thing. But if you read what we call the Constitution of the United States of America, there's no mention of the word democracy. So some people try to say we're in a Republican oligarchy or Democratic Republic or whatever. But even if you say those words, if you use those terms, democratic republic, what does that mean? Democratic democracy. Once again, demo. What is a demo? If I was trying to give you a song and I wanted to make it big, right, and I gave you a demo, what is that? What is a demo? Right, like let's just use words the way that they are meant to use. Let's just say what's supposed to be said. What is a demo? If I say I want to give you a demo, right? I got this pill that I'm doing. I want to give you a demonstration, right? But it's a piece. It's a small piece. I'm not gonna give you the whole thing. How you doing, Christopher? Thanks for being part of the community. It's a small piece. Might be a rough draft, might not be, right? But I'm gonna just give you a small piece of what it is that I do. And if you like this piece, then imagine if you get the whole thing, a sample, an in sample instead of an egg sample. It used to be the word used to be in sample. I'm gonna give you an in sample or a sample. I'm gonna show you how this thing works. A trial run, a first run, right? So I'm gonna give you those things, right? I'm gonna give you a little bit. That's what a demo is. Demo, by definition, no matter who, I'm putting together all the definitions that people try to get you to bow down to. So a demo is literally saying, hey, we have a little bit of people, a few people who live together, a little bit of information, a little bit of product, all right, a little bit of how law works. We'll give you a tiny bit of it, and then we cressy. What does the cressy mean? Cressy means the government. It means how you're governed. So they literally are telling you with a democracy that you are governed by a little bit. And many people are fighting for democracy when the problem is that you shouldn't want to be under a democracy in the first place. I don't think they try to lift up democracies in Rome. In Rome, they say, oh yeah, at one point they didn't even have a king. No, 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 no. Like the people who had power, they were kings. Only certain family members could be in the Senate. You shouldn't want to be part of a democracy. They tell you that they weren't kings. Kings wore purple. Well, senators couldn't wear purple because they weren't supposed to have kings, but every senator was allowed to have a certain amount of purple to show you that they were royalty compared to you. This is how this worked back then. They try to make sure that they get, like, we romanticize too much stuff. You know the reason why you think that it's romantic to go out on a date? First of all, we shouldn't be dating anyways. Why do you only have a date that you're thinking about and not thinking about being with somebody to death do you part? But why do you go out with a date in mind? Like, think about how limiting we are. Oh, I'm just going out with a date. I'm just going out for a one night stand. I'm just going out, and if this one night is okay, maybe we'll pick it up again. We have a really weird, romanticized view of things. But the reason why you think that it's romantic to go out to a restaurant and have a candlelit dinner or to be at home and just have one candle, you think that that's a thing of romantic, which means it's great. You said the Federalist Papers gave all the examples, true, right? But you think that that's great. You know the reason why it's considered to be romantic is because a lot of people couldn't even afford candles. A lot of people in Rome were broke. A lot of people in Rome were third world people, just like a lot of people in the United States of America are dealing with third world issues. And so guess what happened? Like if you could afford in certain places in some of these caves and things that people lived in, if you were able to have a candle, you lit that thing up and it was nice because you could see your food. And so it was nice to be able to sit across from your spouse or maybe even with your family and you guys ate underneath a candle. You could see your food. You think that it's romantic, that means that it's a great thing. No, that was something that, hey, we could barely afford to see at night. You said as long as we're voting, we're participating in the plan? Sure, as long as we're doing a lot of things. Right, Roman antics, right? He said reading the definition for democracy means that people elect, but could still be just one a group. Yeah, that's a modern definition. I'm talking about break down the word to what it actually means. Democracy. I don't need to go by what people change. See, remember, their words were fine the way that they were, right? They remember that they were defined. That means we broke down what was fine, supposedly so that we could recognize it. Then we redefined it, and now if you look at words, if you do proper etymology research, you'll discover that bare minimum, or maximum actually, that nowadays every 25 years language changes. So after 25 years, you keep changing it, you keep changing it, you keep changing it. So yeah, somebody will tell you that romantic means something different than democracy. No, what does demo come from? Demo is talking about something that's small. It's talking about a small people that live in a group of people that live in a village. I'm telling you the words of the actual what they when they those words were created, what they meant, and therefore, even with that being said, you still are not under a democracy because it's not in your constitution. If it's not in your constitution, it's not even lawful. So you're trying to, you see what I'm saying? You're trying to do something that the United States of America doesn't even believe in, because if they believe in it, it's capitalism. If they believe in it, you put your money where your mouth is. You'll write it out. You'll say, this is how we make our money. And they won't write it out because that's not what you're in. If you were in a democracy, right, then things would be even different, even a little more tilted than what it is. But you keep asking for democracy, so they keep giving you what you want. Teddy Roosevelt said that, hey, everybody really should try to be sovereign or try to be private citizens. But since a lot of people want to go ahead and have somebody do everything for them and we can't trust everybody to take care of themselves, we don't mind making sure there's a public government to make sure that they oversee everything that you do. He's a president, too, that's that president. Thanks for being part of the community, Mr. Right Above it. Thanks for being part of Community TV 1219. Like, these are things that are there over and over again. So you gotta ask yourself, is this system protecting and providing for you? If it's not protecting, like, is the system that provides you food, but the food's not real and it's killing you, are they really providing you food? Or are they making sure that you have just enough to be controlled? If you're in a system that says that we will give you genetically modified stuff that gives you side effects for everything, even side effects that include death, right? But we'll specifically conveniently say that, oh yeah, that natural stuff is foolish, or if we do give you any of it, we'll up the price on it so much that only a certain amount of people can get it anyway, right? Like we must recognize that this system is obviously not what it says it is. So yeah, if somebody wants to try and tell you, oh no, the system is a democracy, this, that, or whatever, why would you believe it when it's the same system? Like the same system that tells you, oh yeah, just go to school and you'll be able to fulfill all your dreams, goals, and this and that, and then they're going to have you paying off debt for the rest of your life because you went to go to school. You said still trying to find seeded watermelon. Yeah, there's a couple, like we have to know a couple spots because we travel a lot. We have to know spots just to be able to go for seeded stuff. Like that's how bad it is. A lot of y'all haven't had seeded oranges in a long time. A lot of people don't even know that there's an orange pandemic. That they've been using fake oranges so much that they stopped growing the real thing. So a lot of people don't get real oranges anymore. But the same people who do all that stuff, we're keeping up for the system, and we're trying to say, oh no, we want this, we want a democracy, we want a few people to tell us everything that's supposed to be done. Why would you want that? It's not even constitutional for that to happen. We're gonna give up all our guns. We're calling on the president to control us. Give up all our guns. Even if you don't want to use a gun, you shouldn't want everybody to not have a gun. You know why? You know why? Because now who has the guns? The democracy. The few people who are in position. It's the same thing that's been happening. We were just having the orange conversation, yeah. But it's the same thing that's been happening. So, anyways, we were talking about these presidents that set precedent. And they set precedent. It's not their precedent they set, but they're supposed to make sure that they have a precedent to get you to be it. That's why all of them say, God bless America, even if they don't believe in God. A lot of them are deists, which means that they believe that they themselves can become a deity, a deist, a god, etc., right? George Washington, that's why he has an obelisk. He's supposed to be the modern day Osiris. Same thing that the Pope has where he lives, too. Yeah, you know, same thing that they have. They're telling you the same thing. They're trying to manipulate. They're trying to misrepresent what's there, right? Misappropriate even. So I want to talk about some of these presidents who set precedent because you may not know some of these things. And we talked a lot about some of the older presidents yesterday. We're going to deal with some of the newer presidents, starting with Eisenhower today. Eisenhower is actually, well, I wouldn't even say he's because once again, there's presidents before George Washington, but I always got to say most people just want to start with George Washington, even though George Washington told y'all he had two presidents that were his favorite president, right? He said, do I think we should move back to West Africa? Um, I think if you're able to, I think don't come back to West Africa unless you got a plan for the diaspora. But it depends on what you're called. Some people are called to make sure they make things better for their people here. So it depends, right? But if your goal is to make sure that you go back and you're going to do it, or you're going to make sure that you pick that up so you can help people over here, but just make sure. I feel like we need to make sure that the diaspora is taken care of. There's not a place that an African, there's not a place on this planet that an African has not been. Let's say it like that, right? Like even people who've been trying to say like you got people now, which always bothers me because when I was stationed over there in Pearl Harbor, and I went to Kauai, the main island, or Hawaii, the main island. I know I'm not pronouncing it exactly the way I should, and things like that. But I lived on the island of Oahu for a while. I wanted to stay there, in all honesty, but it just wasn't in the cards. But I wanted to live. I would have lived there had I not had a family and stuff. I would have lived there, and I would have been on the beach homeless and stayed in Hawaii. Like I loved Hawaii that much, right? But I love the people and everything. The people accept us in, and I don't think people recognize this. And a lot of Polynesians, because of colorism and because of Willie Lynch ideals and things like that, that have traveled around the world. We always think about it in just our little place of the world that we live in, right? But it's traveled around the world, this whole thing of us being against each other. But you got to know that when you're dealing with Polynesians, you're dealing with Austronesians. When you're dealing with Polynesians, you're dealing with Melanesians. Like we're the same people. And I remember being over there. My daughter was born in the former castle of the last person who had a royal position in over the Hawaiian people. And so like the Hawaiian culture is something that's really big in our life. And they were trying to feed us the same food because they when they saw my children, they thought my children, they thought that they were Polynesian. They thought they were Hawaiian because we looked the same, right? They wanted to feed them the same stuff. They wanted to give my son stuff that he would be able to get bigger and stronger. They wanted to feed my daughter stuff so that she would be able to have some strength, but to be able to do some of the hula dances and things and have certain things. Like they wanted to give them the same experience. Even like when we went to when we were still doing the church thing, before we started getting into the kingdom more, they accepted us like we were them. There was no difference. But now you got Polynesians in Hawaii that are saying, hey, black folk, do us a favor. White people are already trying to take over. Don't come back over. And they don't even recognize not only are we the same, right, but also if you don't want to take that into account, remember that a lot of people don't know, not only was there a movement to send black people over to Liberia, a lot of us know about that one, right, from Monroe and from Lincoln and from Frederick Douglass, right, at different times. But also, there was a movement to move us over to Hawaii. Too many black people over here. Move them over to Hawaii. Oh, that's a little unknown, not talked about enough. And it almost didn't work out, but it ended up working out. So you got a lot of people, even if you don't want to go back to ancient times, you can't deny our presence over there. You can't tell me to not come to where I already am. And if you really want to get into Hawaii, Hawaii is a wild situation because a lot of people don't know who was the first. So first of all, if you know about Hawaii, you must recognize that all these islands and stuff that they have names, these were actual people, right? So Hawaii, Oahu, Maui, etc. These were actual tribes that lived in different places and eventually had taken over the whole islands, right? And then the people of Hawaii, or the island of Hawaii, led by why am I forgetting his name? Oh my goodness, King Kamehameha, by King Kamehameha. Um, okay, hey, how you doing, Sister Beverly? So King Kamehameha led us to where? I'm sorry, King Kamehameha had the Hawaiian folk or whatever over the island of Hawaii, right? He ends up taking over that. He ends up beating his cousin out or whatever for it. Him and his cousin had like a family civil war or whatever. King Kamehameha then starts taking over the other islands. And they took over Maui, and they took over Oahu, and they took over other ones, right? And King Kamehameha was extremely tall, right? He was like 7 foot plus at least, like some people say 7'2", something like that. Really tall brother, right? Go look up pictures of King Kamehameha when you get a chance. Go do an image search of King Kamehameha. See what he looks like. And you know what got King Kamehameha in trouble? This is how Hawaii got taken over. King Kamehameha liked the British because they were into war, and the British were really great at war. So the British brought over ships and cannons, and they said, if anybody's against you, we'll help you out. You know what? Like I would think that it does. I'm not sure if it has the Dragon Ball Z connection or not, but it makes sense because they put a lot of black stuff in there to and it's racist black stuff in there too. But people just like anime so much. Our people really love anime. I think it's because we had at least something different to watch cartoon wise on television before we had stuff like Static Shock, and that kind of ended up being all there is. There ain't really much black regular cartoons for us even to this day, right? Especially not anything that's like something that's really of value to our people. That's why stuff like the comic book series like Black Sands and stuff, that's why we need to make sure that our children are introduced to things like that if you're going to have them in there. Even doing Black Panther stuff, Black Panther is a perversion of a lot of our stuff. And it's stuff that other people are making money off of, not us, right? But if you look at King Kamehameha, he looked just like you. Afro Samurai was out there for a minute. I don't know if was that a series. I thought that was a movie. Was that a series? Because I liked Afro Samurai. Actually, I guess you could say it was a series. Never mind. You're right. But going back to King Kamehameha, so King Kamehameha's downfall was when he started messing with the British. Right? That's actually when he started messing with the British. Right? He started messing with the British. And when he started messing with the British started coming in there and messing with things. Matter of fact, you'll see King Kamehameha. You'll see King Kamehameha the second and the third, and all them. You'll actually see them in British regalia. You'll see them with British uniforms on, right? You'll see them with the British uniforms on. You know why you'll see them with British uniforms on? Because they were in league with the British. And eventually what happened is the British kind of were messing them over, and then the Americans came in, or these new Americans, not the copper-colored people, indigenous, but these new Americans, they started coming over. And they wanted to get stuff done. So you know what the United States of America did to Hawaii? What they did to Hawaii was this. They came by, see these presidents setting precedent, but they didn't use the American president as the face. Guess who they used as the president? See, this was corporations. We don't know how this stuff works. They used the president of the Dole Corporation. The president of the Dole Corporation, with American backing, got rid of the last queen of Hawaii, right? And got rid of her, put her on house arrest basically, and started beating the brakes off their people to the place to where the only way they were going to survive is if she signed documentation and said, okay, we'll just go ahead and let you guys take over. She got to live basically in like house arrest for the rest of her life in shame. And basically the Dole Corporation, I'm talking about them bananas, right? I'm talking about them peaches and stuff. Yes, the fruit. The Dole Corporation, that still to this day, by the way, has a whole island on it that grows bananas. And by the way, on any of the islands, but it has a whole island that's just basically for growing bananas. And if you go on that island, or if you go to certain places, even on Oahu and Hawaii, I can speak to those specifically, and pick bananas from certain places, even if they're just growing in somebody's yard or something, you could get in trouble because the Dole Corporation owns those bananas. Real talk. And so the Dole Corporation, they put the Dole president as the first president. So before it was part of the United States of America, it was part of Dole. And then Dole sold Hawaii to the United States of America. And that is how Hawaii became a part of the United States of America. Well, some of them, yeah, I guess most of them nowadays wouldn't be the original bananas. Yeah, you'd be right about that. And thanks for being part of the community. Is it L Lumi? I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. Thank you for being part of us today, and we appreciate your presence, right? So you got to recognize that literally, literally, that they took a president of a corporation, put him up so that they could say, hey, we didn't steal it, put him in charge of stuff, and then that president got paid for being the front man by the United States corporation and sold it to the United States corporation. That's how that worked, right? But go look up King Kamehameha. Look at what he looks like. Look at what his daughter. I'm sorry, well, it wasn't even his granddaughter at that point. but look them up. And I'm not gonna act like everything the Polynesians did was wrong. One of the reasons why the royal family, to be honest, too, they made some bad decisions, is because they actually were very much so into incest. So you know, if we're going to be honest about it and talk about the Greeks, which, by the way, a lot of the Greeks would look like us too. So it's a spirit. It's not always as simple as it looks white or whatever, right? But you have all these different things, and we don't recognize them, right? These are precedents. Well, if you want to know about even why the borders in between Mexico, look up, President Polk, look up President Taylor, Virginia slave owners, both of them too, But that was basically stuff that happened to where they took land from, so it was land that was indigenous. Then Spain came over and took it over. Then it was a black man. The second president of Mexico was actually a black man who fought for the independence of Mexico, of our people. But then our people were too stretched out all over the place. So what happens? Basically, because we're too stretched out and we don't have enough people to fight, America came in and just took, which is one of the issues that you have now, where you have a lot of people that are saying all these people are there. It's like, how dare you guys try to come over? You guys are immigrants. No, like this is their land. This is our land. Remember, there's more, and I'm gonna use these terms lightly because they're not real terms. We just kind of made it up. I'm sorry. Well, these aren't real terms. We just kind of made it up. But remember, there was no such thing. There's more Afro Mexicans than there are African Americans, right? Like we forget that we're the same people. There's more Afro Mexicans than there are African Americans, right? And they're indigenous too. They're mixed with African slave ships. They're mixed with people that lived here already. They can be Aztecs. Well, by the way, Aztec means a whole bunch of tribes, right? It's not just one tribe. So when people say, "Oh yeah, all Aztecs people were up there on top of pyramids killing people," you're talking about one tribe, right? You're talking about one tribe out of the Aztecs, but nevertheless, like but you had us. Oh, matter of fact, when you go into California, that's the Khalifa people. The Khalifa people, they were a black tribe. We have pictures of them, like we have literal pictures of them that you can look up. The Khalifa people, and they were a black tribe, and like they looked like you and I. They had hair like you and I, but they were an indigenous to this country, right? Right, and or what we call this country now, and they were in California. Khalifa was a queen or a tribe or a chieftain, and she was so popular that after she died, they made her into a spirit. They made her into somebody that they worship. So when you go to California, you're going to the place of Khalifa. Now we think of California as, oh yeah, just a nice place, sun, this and that, or whatever. No, there were a whole people that were in there, right? There were whole people that were over there. And that's been stuff that we've had access to, but they don't tell us that. How you doing, Keith? Thanks for being part of the community. I'm sorry, I missed a couple comments from you, Don. You said people always think I'm from wherever I am, and I usually have any issue. Usually don't have any issue communicating with Jamaican, Puerto Rican, the Dominican Republic. I think that's what you're saying. Jamaican PRDI. Yeah, but you don't have issues communicating. You said the bear is her. Now that part I didn't know. I was actually talking to my wife the other day, saying I want to study more on the bear because they make the bear look scary. But that could make sense if she was somebody that they were afraid of. And how you doing, Shalom to, AKA Akintunde, right? But we don't recognize it, right? So these are all things that have been taken away, were stripped by presidents. Presidents came by and they were stripping these things. You got to remember that the presidents, see, and here's another thing. See, I said we were going to deal with new presidents. I promise we will. We'll be on longer than what we were yesterday. So we just getting started. If you want to stick around, we just getting started, right? But when you look at when you look at even like the Civil War, right? What they call the Civil War, really it's a Revolutionary War. It's just a Revolutionary War that the Confederacy never won. By the way, was there ever a Confederacy? Just real quick to show you, because people talk about President Jefferson Davis, right, as if he's like somebody part of the Union and stuff. Anyway, like if you believe in the Union, then President Jefferson Davis is not a president; he's a traitor, right? Just like General Lee is not a gentleman. Well, I guess he is a gentleman because gentlemen do bad things, but he's a traitor. you know. Yeah, we should stop celebrating Thanksgiving. Or if you want to celebrate it the way the European people did, then you're not supposed to eat on that day. You're supposed to fast and pray. That's what Thanksgiving's supposed to be. So we don't even do that right. Like we even misappropriate European culture. Like it's not to get as fat and nasty as you can and come together as a family. You're supposed to You know, you're supposed to fast. That's what Thanksgiving is. That's if you're going to actually do what the Europeans did. That's what a day of Thanksgiving was. You know, if we're getting into all the Sambo stuff and all the Tisquantum or Squanto stuff and all that stuff, but that's what it was, right? We've been taught something different. But anyways, when you get into the United States history, right, the United States of America and then the United States Corporation, everything has always been a fight for one thing, the whole time, right? And that's why we got to know. Like people talk about all this stuff. You've been told to have faith in a corporation, and you don't have faith in sovereignty. You don't have faith in being a sovereign under the ultimate sovereign. You don't have faith in natural law and universal law and things of that nature, right? So let me go ahead and talk to you like the person who made the universe, because if you don't believe what I'm saying, universe literally means a verse, spoken sentence. So a universe is a single spoken sentence. You live in somebody's sentence. If you don't believe that, you should probably stop calling it a universe, right? That's what these terms mean. So if we're going to talk about a universe and universal law, and they're using universal law all the time, then let me show you what's been happening. Basically, since 1776, right, and even a little bit beforehand, they got it to 1776, got people to get riled up enough for 1776. You've got to recognize this, that the fight in the United States of America has been one fight and one fight alone. I don't care what they try to tell you. I don't care if they try to say it's under classism or racism or schism or male chauvinism or misogyny or misandry, whatever the case might be. There's only one fight that's been happening. Thank you for being part of the community, Skydink. One fight. The fight has been capitalism against chattel slavery. That's it. Neither one has great intentions for anybody. But that's been the fight for the powers that be. The powers that be, I either need chattel slavery to run things or I need capitalism to run things. Capitalism uses chattel slavery, right? And chattel slavery, even though to a small degree, uses some capitalism. But the fight has been what? Capitalism against chattel slavery. That's it. We can try to make this whatever you want, right? But let's go back to let's speak universal language. Let's speak as the one who created everything. Let's speak to each other as human beings. Let's talk to the humanity of it. The fight has not been against each other. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. What is a principality? A principality is a place of origin or even a place of kingdom. We're wrestling against origins. We don't know where these things originated from. So allow me to help you today to show you how there's a system where presidents set precedent, right? Capitalism is once again defined as a system in which politics and economics are used to control trade and industry. That trade and industry is wielded by private corporations and not by the state or the government. Your fight, the people, private corporations, their fight, the people who tell your government what to do, their fight has not been for you to stop being oppressed. Their fight has not been for you to be able to make sure that you feel better about yourself. Their fight has not been for you to work less hours. Their fight has not been to raise minimum wage. Stop going to these people and asking them to participate in something that they're not there. Have you noticed? The only time that they move on those things is if private corporations feel like they're not making enough money. Private corporations started losing business because of Colin Kaepernick stuff for a little bit, right? They still didn't do anything with bringing Colin Kaepernick back, but they did just enough to get y'all off their back so you would buy their stuff again. That's all they did, right? But when you move on there, when the private corporation feels the sting of the latch, all of a sudden we got an issue. We got to make this stuff work because we're gonna make less capital, and we can't make and they don't and they're talking about all this stuff, but they don't recognize what's going on as far as chattel slavery. So before we even get to there, to where they see these two things are going together. Yes, sir. Excuse me, y'all. Yes, sir.
Can I have some help putting it back into the right language?
How did you even do it?
I don't know.
Okay. I mean, you might not be able to. You might just have to speak and we try to do his best. I'm sorry, I'm sitting here talking to my son, but I'll talk to you guys while I'm setting this up for him. But yeah, you have to go to a place of realizing what's going on. You know, you have to go to a place of realizing what's going on. Somebody might have to help me. I'm not very good at technologies. Because somebody out there, if he did something to where he changed the language for his keyboard, how do I change the language back? Let me see, check spelling, enable. So you might just have to deal with it in a different language until I'm finished. I don't know. Yeah, you might just have to deal with it in different language, okay?
Okay.
When I finish, I'll try to figure it out, okay? Yeah, I'm in settings. I'm looking up keyboard. Let me see punctuation, preview. Oh, okay. Well, it's in English and French. You know, le français. So you can speak in French, or you just have to tell them in.
I want English.
Yeah, I know, but you might have to speak in French. Okay, I set the dictation to English, so we'll see what it does. But you might have to. You know enough French.
Mhm.
Stop being afraid to speak what you know. You know it.
Mhm.
All right. Close the door back, please, or the screen door, so that the bugs don't get in. Thank you. Okay. Sorry about that. uh, uh, I'm not even when you're teaching, you're still a father, right? Um, where were we at? Somebody help me. Where were we at last? Oh, okay, yeah. So the fight has always been. Thank you, Holy Spirit. The fight has always been between capitalism and chattel slavery. That's been the fight, right? Capitalism and chattel slavery. That's been the fight. Capitalism versus chattel slavery. You can try to call it whatever it is. Both of them still include the other, but one has to reign supreme. That's been the fight. Capitalism versus chattel slavery. Once again, capitalism is defined. I think that's where I left off. Thank you. Capitalism is defined as a system in which politics and economics are used to control trade and industry. The trade and industry is wielded by private corporations and not the state. So you've been looking for the government to tell you to do things, but the government has to work for corporations. Capitalism. Now, this is what happened. You had the British and you had these British colonies, right? You had the English and you had these English colonies, correct? You had the English and the English colonies, correct? We can agree on that much to start. Because somebody might be, oh, I don't know where he's going. Let's start where we can agree. We had English, we had England, we had English colonies, and England and English colonies, there were English people, correct? Also, what were in English colonies was slavery. Slavery was in Massachusetts. It was in Maine. It was in New York. Matter of fact, don't forget the stock market in New York. That's where it was, right? You had Virginia. Virginia was Virginia and West Virginia. Stop talking about the North version of it. It was one Virginia, right? That's why the West Virginia. And when they always talk about how West Virginia separated and came to the Union, guess what? Like it's still part. There's worse stuff in West Virginia than happens in some places of Virginia. It's pretty close, right? For those who've ever lived near there or lived in there. You had Maryland. Maryland, even though it was on the border and it was supposed to be on the northern side, Maryland still owned slaves. As a matter of fact, it was Maryland slave owners who were some of the first people to get reparations for letting go of their slaves. Okay, so you had all these people and they were a family. We forget that when the Civil War happened, it wasn't as simple as everybody in the American colony was against everybody coming over from England. There were a lot of people in the English colonies who fought against their own family in the English colonies, right? There was a revolutionary war against their own family, right? Maryland, you're right. Maryland, Queen Mary, Bloody Mary, named after her, Maryland, right? And when Maryland is there, what happens with Maryland? Maryland is a place to where you have Roman Catholicism, right? Heavy Roman Catholicism. Roman Catholicism. The Pope was okay with chattel slavery and making slaves of anybody according to the doctrine of the doctrine of destiny, right? Destiny doctrine, doctrine of destiny, right? Which says that if we go to your place and we don't find a white Christian male there, we can discover your land because you don't count as a human being. That's already stuff that's there, right? But you have this stuff that's going on, and you have capitalism that's starting to take place. So remember, Haiti has happened. As far as Haiti is already having a little bit of uprising surge. There's certain tribes in Haiti that have never even bowed down to any kind of slavery. Doctrine of discovery, thank you. They've never bowed down to different things like that or whatever. And then, so now you have Haiti, who now is really starting to pick up. You've had, Duddy Bookman. You've had the sister who was a priestess. Forgive me for not having her name at the top of my head right now. You eventually will have people like Toussaint Louverture. You'll have people that will be second in command that become first command, like I'm forgetting his name too. The person that came right after Toussaint. I'm having a moment anyway. But you have all these things, so you're having that happen, right? That's starting in the late 1700s and it's finishing up in 1803, 1804. So England, who will tell everybody around the world that they actually stopped slavery and they made it illegal, They still had capitalism, which allowed for chattel slavery, but they didn't go by chattel slavery first. But they were switching over to capitalism because it wasn't as you got to follow the money. It wasn't something that made money. If you were able to create a system, that's one of the reasons why you got to create your own system. If you were able to create a system that made more money than having chattel slavery involved in it, like the people that are in charge, the 1% and the 1% and the 1% and the 1%, those people would actually stop what they're doing and follow after you if they knew it would make them more money. The only reason why they deal with stuff that is in capitalism and chattel slavery is because it makes money. Some people don't care about nothing else but there. If you were to have a system where your people benefited off of doing something that didn't mean that somebody had to be enslaved, and you were able to do it well, they follow your lead because that's all they do is they come and they take. So they see what you were doing. They would send somebody like, for example, the eagle. You know the eagle that you guys see on some of the stuff that's presented. You see an eagle and it has its talons, and then one of the talons is holding arrows in it. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. And one of the talents that holds arrows, thanks for being part of the community. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Philia? Is it Philia? I'm not sure Philia Negatim. I'm not sure how to say that. But it's holding arrows. The reason it's holding arrows is because initially there was a people that are known as the Haudenosaunee, which were several different tribes had been displaced by English colonies and things like that, and these same people, they had been pushed, right, by people like George Washington and others and Thomas Jefferson, etc. They had been pushed out of their place. So they came together and they had this. It's a very great story. Matter of fact, one of the guy who became the leader of it was actually the last person you thought would have been the leader. That's a great story to read about. You call these people now. Who do we call the Haudenosaunee now? We call them the. I don't even go by the fake name. What do we call them now? Over there near the Great Lakes and everything. I can't remember the name that we call them now. I'm sorry. It'll come to me. But the Haudenosaunee, basically, they came together. It was 5 tribes. Initially, it became bigger later on. But initially, they came together as these 5 tribes. And they squeezed, or I'm sorry, they came together. They said that we need to come together. So the person who started the whole movement for the 5 tribes to come together, he brought them together, and he had five. He said, "Hey, somebody give me an arrow." So they gave him one arrow. He took the arrow and he breaks it. No, it's not that. There's somebody else that we call them. It doesn't even sound like Haudenosaunee, but the Iroquois. We call them the Iroquois now, right? But they were known as the Haudenosaunee back then. And the Haudenosaunee basically he takes it and he breaks one. He breaks the one arrow. He snaps it. He says, "See, by one tribe by itself, it's nothing." Snaps it into being, right? But then he says that then he has two, but then he says, "Hey, everybody, somebody representing each tribe, give me an arrow." He takes the 5 arrows, he can't break it. He says, "Together, we're unbreakable." So that's now somebody says, "Where did they get those arrows from?" That's just trying to say something that could be coincidental. No, because guess who came to study from the Haudenosaunee, even though they would end up taking their land and stuff anyways? Benjamin Franklin came and sat at their feet, right? And he came and he learned how they ran their government, took that back and said we should apply some of that stuff to what we do, right? And then they killed him off. And don't be like, oh, Benjamin Franklin, he tried his best. Benjamin Franklin was a slave owner too. And he was a libertine. So he was somebody who thought that he couldn't stop his sexual indulgences even until basically to the day he died. And that meant that he was, more than likely, not even more than likely, we know, he was raping his slaves. So so they legit took the Constitution of somebody else. And now, remember I was talking about the Confederacy? Even when they said they had a Confederacy in the South and put President Jefferson Davis there, right, trying to get him to perpetuate something that's there, you know that there's no such thing that's ever existed on Earth. Hear what I'm about to say? Legally, legally speaking, lawfully speaking, there is no such thing that's ever existed on Earth that you can call a confederacy outside of native confederacies. Did you know that? He was a necromancer. I guess we could look. Yeah, you can look at him up like that, for sure. Right? A vampire, even taking that energy and stuff, for sure. Trying to live longer. Yeah. Yeah, you can look at it like that. That was probably his belief system. He never came out publicly and said it, but if you look at how he lived his life, for sure. And how you doing, Temple? Right? But hear what I'm saying. Hear what I'm saying? These people, these presidents, they profit off of your pain. Necromancy. Yeah, that's real talk. But hear what I'm saying? Even the government that's there, all they did was pervert stuff that was there for pure purposes, and now they use them. They get you to sign off. That's why your signature's there. They get you to sign off on the impurity. Somebody had asked me, who's part of our Patreon family, we're gonna make sure on Tuesday we talk about the purification process. Because they were like, and all the stuff I hear you mention purification as of late, can you take us through some different things? So, and of course we can, but a lot of people don't recognize, like, all they did was take what you created that was pure and they made it impure. Yes, Sister Benita, how you doing? I'm so sorry we missed you down here. I had family emergency and stuff, and I've been all over the place, but hopefully you guys are doing well, right? But you gotta realize and recognize that these people have been doing some wild stuff for quite a bit. Like, and we don't recognize it. We don't think about it. We don't honor it or whatever. And we give to these presidents. Like, people give way more money than they ever should even think about. It's funny. Somebody will hear the word tithe or offering or donation or whatever to their own people and be frustrated. But here you are donating to all these people. Like, when you donated to Black Lives Matter, that's one of the things. I have no problem saying that Black Lives Matter. But when you say Black Lives Matter organization, oh, I have a huge problem with it. Why? Because the Black Lives Matter um, thing, when you gave them your money, you found out, oh, they were giving that to Democrats in Congress, or they were giving them to people that started, living in millionaire, in $1 million mansions and stuff. I'm still not in the mansion, but I had people telling me that, oh, you're just trying to do this. Like, you guys had faith and put faith in people. They living in mansions and stuff now. They use that to be able to get a vote. I believe that Black Lives Matter, but the organization was trash. Now they sitting up there in your schools and they're teaching. See, our president set precedent. The president said, "Yeah, we're gonna do Black Lives Matter. We're gonna force it in the schools." What? Yeah, we're gonna force it into the schools. Look up the black. We've done this before. Do your homework if you weren't with us before when we went over this. But look up the Black Lives Matter pyramid. And you'll discover when you look up that Black Lives Matter pyramid, you'll make some discoveries. You'll be like, wow. So it'll use the term black, but it ain't really talking about black people. It's talking about LGBTQ plus. And I'm not here to argue that LGBTQ plus are not human beings and shouldn't be treated with respect. Everybody should. I believe that everybody should, right? However, why are you using blackface for your organization? And then the next move that they did was they started having all these black people come up in front of you guys and say, "Hey, time out. I'm black and I'm LGBTQ plus. I can't separate myself from that." No, you're not going to fall on my emotions and get me to fall for the trap, right? Like, if you're LGBTQ plus, they don't arrest you because of that. But if you're black, you might get killed because of that. That was the issue. Is that our lives mattered as well. Not, we need to make sure that we give money that ultimately just went to one side of the same coin. Just saying. People don't like it when you talk like that, but that's real. I'm not here to say that, hey, because you are LGBTQ plus, you're going to hell. I don't have a heaven to hell to put nobody in, including myself. That's why I got to be righteous too, just like everybody else. I don't get to tell you to do something that I can't do myself, right? Like, I don't get to tell you something that I'm not going to be held accountable for and have to be judged for myself. Of course not, right? And I've made plenty of mistakes in my life that are worse than LGBTQ plus. Oh no, doing that's an abomination. Okay, well, I've killed people with my tongue. I've lied and hurt people's lives. I've been a thief to my own parents. Not proud of it, but it is what it is, right? That's why I can tell a lie. I can spot a lie a lot of times, even in all this rhetoric they give us, because I was one of the best liars to ever exist. All right, Keith. I was one of the best liars to ever do it. Real talk. So that's why I hate lying, because I know it's one of the best ones. How you kill people off. You said nationality is your original sovereign status. I mean, the wording is however we want to get there. As long as you can get to a place where you're not a U.S. citizen. If you can get there to making sure you're native, improve it. If you can get there to making sure that that you're Moroccan, improve it. If you can get there to prove that you're a Moor, right? If you can get there and prove it by saying that you're a non-citizen national, which is usually the easiest way, whichever way, right? But we're trying to get away from this presidential thing that sets a precedence that has us in a brainwash status, like Auntie B is saying, like Sister Benita is saying. We got to get out of that brainwash status. Thank you, always blessed. Yeah, I got to be honest now because I used to be. I'm telling you, I've seen what happens when you just make stuff up, or I've seen what happens when I would lie because I just wanted to look like I was the smartest person in the room. And a lot of times that's what's happening now. Is a lot of people don't know any better, but they want to look like they know everything, so they just say something even if it's not even close to being true. That's being part of community pips. So I've learned, like I've had to go back and apologize to people. I'm still looking for people to apologize for stuff that I said that I know messed up their lives and stuff, even if they don't want to hear it. It's part of the healing process for me, and it's part of the healing process for them. I can't be, like I can't be sitting up there talking about I'm be selfish with the healing like they needed to. And that's why we got to talk about this stuff. We haven't had a chance to heal, right? Like people who are trying to come into the kingdom can't separate from the world because they still are attached to lies. And we got to tell the truth about it to give them a chance to vent, be angry, be mad. Like that's why I even apologize. I'll tell y'all as a pastor, I'll be saying stuff. I'll be apologizing for other pastors. People are like, why are you apologizing for what somebody else did? Because guess what? I can see that you mad at them, and they ain't gonna apologize for themselves. So let me go ahead and let you know, because you need to hear that. You need to hear, I'm sorry that we taught you foolishly. I'm sorry that they didn't teach you about equity in Bible study and stuff like that, even though equity is in Proverbs chapter 1, verse 3. I'm sorry they didn't teach you about generational wealth, even though it's in Proverbs chapter 13, verse 22. I'm sorry that they didn't teach you to make sure that you train up your children and making sure that they're the lender and not the borrower, even though it's in Proverbs chapter 22, verses 6 and 7. I apologize. Like I'm sorry they didn't teach you that about marriage and making sure that you comprehend the stuff, even though they told you Proverbs 18:21, death and life is in the power of the tongue, and those that love it will eat the fruit thereof. But they never told you verse 22 is attached to it. He who finds a wife finds a constitutional, or what you call good thing, and will attain favor from Adon, meaning that if you find a wife who is a wife, she's already pre-qualified, and you're pre-qualified as a husband, you'll be looking for somebody to speak well of, and they'll speak well of you, and therefore you'll grow together and always have favor from Adon. Like I have to apologize because we got a lot of food. We got a lot of people that are going to go to church on Sundays and will not know any of those things that we said because they don't even know their constitution. What you trying to talk about, the Constitution of the United States of America, you don't even know how law works. Matter of fact, you're so busy telling people that law doesn't exist, right? At least the presidents who set precedents, at least they talk about law sometimes, right? At least they talk about law. You won't even talk about law, and then but you'll sit up there and say you'll say, don't be obedient to the law, the one who made heaven and earth. But then you'll say, hey, when you go out to the red light, stop, and when you get to the stop sign, stop. Doesn't make sense. We're glad that you came on, Jenny, as well. Thank you. All right. And thank you for the love for those who gave. I think it was Maverick and Minister Tam. Appreciate you. Right. Hello, how you doing, Sister Shima? So we have to be honest about this. You say, Amen. Some people are even lying to themselves. At least tell the truth to the person in the mirror. Yeah. But guess what? We have cognitive dissonance. If you're trying to hold on to being a modern American, if you're trying to hold on to being a modern American, real talk. If you're trying to hold on to be a modern American, just real talk, right? Then can you really be free? It's cognitive dissonance. If you're trying to be in the kingdom of heaven and you're trying to be in the republic of the United States corporation, can you how do you exist in that? You exist in a world of double-mindedness, cognitive dissonance, frustration, right? That's why we're focusing on these presidents. That's why we're led. We got to make sure that we talk about these presidents, right? We got to make sure that we talk about these presidents to set a precedent for foolishness. Because you're not going to hear this, but this is real. All right, we got to do the maths, right? We have to make sure we get this. Amen. Amen. Red Vanilla, how you doing? We got to get this together. We got to make sure this stuff adds up. So, in all these things we've been hearing, let's see why, right? Because a lot of people say, how do we get out of things like that? Well, hey, if you want to join us, look, we're trying to get land together. Help us out. We got it to where you don't even do anything. Just share a link with people and see if they'll buy up some snacks and stuff like that. Help us to get the land together. Help us to make sure that we're doing this stuff. Join us up for our schools. We're trying to make sure that we do some version of, I don't know if we'll do Sunday school or something like that, but, we're trying to do some version of something for our children. Those of you who are homeschooling, we're trying to do something together. My wife has been had packets ready to go. Everybody says, let's go, let's get it. Then we say, okay, now we're going to start. And then nobody contacts back. Like we have to have a new habit and a new fervor that is uncommon to man. We have to have a mindset that says that these things are more important, that our land is more important than their land. And we have to recognize that the same way that a religious sect or whatever group that you want to put it under can own land, right? And you applaud the Amish. but then your people are trying to put stuff together and you ain't got no money put in, right? And you're paying all these taxes and all these other people, and you could make sure you're a non-citizen national, only have your Social Security taken out, and once we get to a certain position, then you can say, oh, we have a plan for our elderly, get that Social Security number away from me. Y'all can keep the numbers so you can make money off of it, but I'm not going to be attached to it. This is being in the system and not of it, or what you would call being in the world and not of it. You said to have sovereignty from the U.S. corporation. What's the first step? What do we have to let go? Well, once again, it's a whole bunch of steps. It's a lifestyle. It's not being attached. You know, you taking a lot of steps, Sister Benita, because you growing your own food. You know, like it's not just the paperwork. It's making sure that I don't have to be attached to it. Right? If your child has to learn, if your child has to go to a school system, and this is what happens for real, if your child has to go to a school system and learn that George Washington is the first president and has to put that as the exact answer on the test, they already are going to have a problem with sovereignty because they have to live in a lie that says something that we know to be false is real. Right? So if you are not setting up a system or even dedicated to making sure you uplift something and giving rewards to a system that says that, hey, I want to have you in a position that when you say George Washington is number 9, we have something for you. We lift you up. We say that you're valuable. Right? Like I'd love to have it on here to where at some point, you know, we can give out awards to these babies, right? To where these babies can be on a Zoom or something like that, and they can say what their knowledge is, and I can go, wow, you know what, that's awesome. But we come on the live and we dedicate the whole, well, maybe not the whole live, but we dedicate a certain thing at a certain time, you know, to just say, hey, we just giving out award. We just want these babies to know that they're loved. Here's your certificate in front of everybody, right? We don't have anything that's set up for that, but we show up for the school system. My baby had to learn a lie, and they went from kindergarten to first grade still learning to lie, and they learned about the alphabet, but they never learned about the alphabet, which came before the alphabet, and they write it out when they write out the alphabet, but have no clue. They don't even know what these things mean, but that's the first thing we should know. Or I'm glad they can quote Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, but they don't comprehend that it's not even called Genesis, it's called Barashat. And if you knew what Barashat is, you know that means the first 6 characters of what you call the Bible. It literally would mean the son who comes out the right family, was one with the father, will be destroyed, or I'm sorry, will become our, sorry, the son who comes out the right family, was one with the father, will become our head by being destroyed, being led to the cross, or the place that it's finished, shaped like what you would call a lowercase t, right? Because you know alphabet, but you don't know alphabet, or alabat, or alphabet. You say amen as a teacher, how do you know the truth and teach lies? Yeah. So we have a system that doesn't even lift them up. They have no clue. So a lot of people read Genesis and they just think, oh, this just means the beginning of things. But no, that actually, by the shots, that's why Genesis 1:1 and John 1:1 are talking about each other. They're having a conversation. John 1:1. In the beginning was the word was with Elohim, the word was Elohim. The same was in the beginning, nothing was made without him. He's using Hebrew characters. He's saying Barashat, in beginning, and what you call Genesis 1:1, in beginning. It's saying, hey, when you go back to this first scroll, look at how it's spelled. In the beginning was Bates, the son who comes out the right family. I'm sorry, and the son who comes out the right family, Bates was in the beginning was the word, and he was with Aleph, the father, and Bates was Aleph, the son who comes out the right family, was the father. The same is the same person I'm talking about now is in the scroll in the beginning called by the shots. I'm using the scroll. I'm telling you culture, and people don't know that at all. But are going to go today and listen to somebody tell them about Genesis and will have no clue that they have no idea what they're being told. They're being told falsehood. Isn't that right? And if somebody tells them the truth, somebody could give it to them. Somebody could write it out. Somebody could say we offer classes. Somebody could do what, and people would still do what? Reject knowledge. That's why people love that verse. My people perish for a lack of knowledge, but it's not because knowledge is not there. It says it's because you have rejected knowledge. Knowledge means intimacy. You have a chance to be intimate. You're aware of some things, but you're not intimate with them. Some of us are not aware of some things. Like as am I. I still got some things I need to become aware of, right? But we are what? We are not intimate with those things. In the beginning was the word, and the word was Elohim. The word was Elohim. He's spelling out by the shots in Hebrew characters, and we don't even know. He's telling you what the first word is. That's why he says in John chapter 1, verse 14, that there was a tabernacle, that there was Amanava'el, or what you call Emmanuel, that there was, that he said the same, the word became flesh and dwelt amongst us. He was saying the same person that became flesh was the same person that was Badashat. study, right? And yeah, and even when we teach Hebrew characters, we start off at Psalm 119. Psalm 119, you've read it and never knew what it meant. You've heard all these people preach on Psalm 119 and probably never knew what it meant. Why? Because Psalm 119 is based off of characters. There's 176 verses. There's 8 verses for characters. There's 22 characters in the Hebrew language. 22 times 8, 176, or 176 divided by 8 is 22, whichever, right? And so when you read it, the first 8 verses are dealing with Aleph. So if you want to know what the first 8 verses actually mean, you need to know what Aleph means. Then you can read it, and then you can comprehend it. See, there's only one interpretation, many applications. I hear it about Kakodash. Holy Spirit, she says we got to get back to these presidents. But see, you need to comprehend why it's important that you see what's happening in the system. You got somebody setting the precedents that you shouldn't have. Now, a lot of this information I'm going to be giving from you, giving to you, excuse me, that's about to come up, is by somebody who I really respect and honors a wealth of information. And not necessarily trying to give you stuff that's going to cause change, but he's what we would call a historian by today's standards. But he's a great wealth of information. His name is Noam Chomsky. Some of you probably know what I'm talking about. Some of you don't. It's spelled Noam, first name Noam. So think Noah, but take the H off and put an M where that H is. Noam, Noam. Last name Chomsky, Chomsky. Thank you, Minister Tamer has it in the chat for you guys to look up. Noam Chomsky has a lot of great information. Any book that he's written, any speech that he's given, he can be a little dry. I'll be honest with you, especially as he's gotten older. But if you can just hang in there, like and you get used to listening to him speak, I promise you, like he's one of the greatest to ever do it as far as giving you how this stuff works, U.S. government stuff like that. Okay, so there's something that's called the Nuremberg trials. We've talked about the Nuremberg Code on here before in the Nuremberg trials. So if you're not aware of what those things are, please look it up. It's basically, long story short, um, you know, people have been experimenting on people for years and years and years. It came out what the Germans were doing, not just against the Jews, but against POWs, black people, Jehovah's Witnesses, Christians, people that disagreed with the political opinion of Hitler, et cetera, people who have birth defects, all these different things, right? So there's something called Nuremberg trial. That's actually spelled Nuremberg. So Nur Emberg, Berg, Nuremberg. And what that was basically when they saw all the stuff that was going on, America, because America had, once again, they had their hand in it. They were making money off of this stuff, believe it or not. So, America, once again, you got people who are in positions, private corporations, who need to make sure that something gets fixed. They have a trial. The president, even, it's not Eisenhower, I believe. I think it's the one right before Eisenhower. But basically, the president says we need to go ahead and look at this. They actually have the trials in the United States of America, and they put on trial all these different things. And people know what comes out of it is something called the Nuremberg Code. The Nuremberg Code basically is something saying that nobody deserves, because we only think about the people that were, forgive my bluntness, but it's hard to hear, but it is what happened. We only think about people that were, shot in these concentration camps, or we only think about people who were burned, or cooked even to death and things like that. But we forget that a lot of what happened was that there were what people today would disguise as clinical trials, but medical trials that were being given. Hey, Shalom, how you doing, Poppy? So there's a lot of medical trials and different things like that are happening, right? Where they were stabbing or injecting or giving the jab, giving vaccinations, even if you will, even though they wouldn't have called them vaccinations, but they were giving things to people that were experimental. And so anything that was experimental, basically, they came up with the Nuremberg Code to say you can use that as worldwide law to protect yourself. That's what we oftentimes use when we try to make sure people can be protected, when they need something to write up, for their religious exemption and all that stuff. We'll usually, use that to supplement our belief system, right? MK Ultra type stuff you could say as well. You know, anything basically where it's a doctor of any kind, right? Because doctors are practitioners. They practice, right? Doctors are not supposed to heal. They are supposed to practice. Doctors perform certain things to practice on you. That's why you even sign certain documents. Because what if something happens in you and they need to do something or they feel like doing something to see, maybe this will work. They get to practice on you. You sign it away on the dotted line, right? That's why you should be careful what you sign and careful where you go. Careful what you're eating. Even puts you in a position where you got to lean on somebody else. Because as Malcolm X taught us, when you got to depend on your oppressor for a job or anything of the sort, you're in bad shape. So you had this thing called the Nuremberg trials. Out of the Nuremberg trials, you had all these laws that came to be, right? And basically, this makes under this stuff that came out, pretty much every president since then can be indicted on something, right? Um, Maybe if we have time to go over MK Ultra, I'm more so concerned on the president stuff. So if it leans in there, maybe I'm be honest, I'm not an expert in MK Ultra either. I know about it, but I don't know if I'm the person to go to where I can connect dots the way I can with other things. But we'll see. We'll see how we go. It's something I've been meaning to study, but I got a lot of stuff that I studied. Right. But we're talking about these presidents. This is kind of part two of what we talked about yesterday. These presidents setting precedent. And as I said, we will talk about some modern things now. So let's get into some of this modern stuff. So if we start with Eisenhower, once again, Eisenhower was a black president. I know they told you Obama, but before Eisenhower, there was Lincoln too, and before Lincoln, there were others, right? It was hidden. They could pass. But Eisenhower's mama, and look at Eisenhower's mama, you'll see what Eisenhower is real quick. Just because he could pass, black come in all shades, so to speak, right? Black holds all the colors, right? But but Eisenhower. Okay, I don't know about Howard Zinn that much. Actually, I don't know anything about Howard Zinn, honestly. Eisenhower. What happened? Eisenhower overthrew. So what did Eisenhower do? You know how people talk so bad about. Thank you, Sister Deborah. How people talk about bad about Iran and all this stuff. What did Eisenhower do? Eisenhower is the reason why Iran is the way it is. Iran is the place where King sat. Some of the wonders of the world are right there in Iran and Iraq, right? But Eisenhower, he overthrew Iran with a military coup. He didn't like the fact it was going to be, he didn't like the fact that they were becoming democratic, what we call democratic, right? What we think democratic means that they could vote, and that poor people had the right to be able to make choices, and these poor people were asking for them to start doing things that blessed the people and wouldn't bless the United States of America. Eisenhower made sure that he overthrew them and helped out the military coup so that the people who are in charge of Iran now, or the type of leader that's in charge of Iran now, it's because America opened the floodgates to that. The same America that now tells you that we need to come against Iran because they're not going to let go of their things that could lead to them having the same ability that we do, to be able to bomb people and kill off whole cities and stuff with nuclear bombs. We don't want Iran to catch up with us. They're terrible people. But the only reason Iran is in the position that they're in is because of you. Right? What else did Eisenhower do? Eisenhower is responsible for what happened in Guatemala. People talk about Guatemala and what bad shape it's in, this and that, or whatever. Well, guess what? The first and last, what you would call, once again by this term, democratic government, the first and last one that existed was gotten rid of by Eisenhower. Now, why would Eisenhower be doing that? Because Guatemala doing those things, right? First of all, you got the war machine. You got that horse, right? That horse that's there for conquering's sake, and that other horseman, right? Revelation chapter 6, that other horseman, that other spirit that's there to make sure that people are just, killing the control. Guatemala was stepping up and making sure that people could have freedom. We can't have that. Eisenhower stopped that. The same Eisenhower that got famous and became president because of what he did to free people during World War II was out here making sure that he worked for the people that he worked for before to make sure that Guatemala was taken care of. And it couldn't take care of itself. That's what they mean when it was taken care of. He said, I am Fitz. Thanks for being part of the community. Hey, how you doing? Shalom Crown. Um, he said, U.S. is like two-faced best friend. Cheer you on till you get stabbed in the back. Yeah, well, I think that in all honesty, the U.S. has been a snake. you know, it's like that old story, right? There was a guy who found a cobra. Let's just call it a cobra. There was a guy that found a king cobra. King cobra was dying. So right, and so at first he was hesitant to help, but he helped him anyway. The king cobra was like, "Thank you. I'll never forget your kindness." King cobra healed. King cobra was fed by hand by him. King cobra and him became friends. He would walk and it would slither. They would go everywhere together. Everything was fine. And then one day, all of a sudden, he reached out to be able to, just the same way he had always been to just show love. He had reached out to the king cobra, and when he went out to reach to the king cobra bit him. The guy begins to die of the poison, and says, "Why did you bite me? Why are you killing me? Why would you do this? How could you do this to me?" King Cobra, who's sad that he bit him, but he tells him, he's like, "Hey, I'm sorry, but you knew I was a snake from the beginning. That's what we do." I feel like the United States of America, that's the relationship that people have. And unfortunately, rather than saying, "Hey, even though I don't mind maybe helping you, but I'm not going to hang with you every day," right? I think people have gotten to a position to where they're so stuck in Stockholm syndrome that they won't come out from the thing that keeps killing them. You said that story hits different because of what somebody did, yeah. And we don't look for proper people. That's why I've gotten out of the habit. I had my little bit of time when I started learning some of this stuff and racism and what things did and things that happened to my own family members. And I have a mother that I've showed some of you guys before where she could pass for white, but she was really black, and therefore it caused problems on both sides of the family and stuff. I went through a long thing of being like bump people who are dark skinned and light skinned for a long time. I went through a colorism thing. I went through a racism thing myself, where it was like, yo, if white people did that, and all of them, you forget about your Jane Elliott's and your Tim Wises and your John Browns and the list goes on, and your Irishmen and people who have fought for you and things. You forget, right? But now I've gotten to a place where I'm like, yeah, my heart can't be messed over by that because that's not even how our people rolled. Even when Solomon built the temple, when Solomon built the temple, he said, even if a stranger comes, as long as they are about the same thing that we are concerning your law and your ways, he said, protect them too. You know. But, anyways, before I get too deep into that, stay on point. So Guatemala, Eisenhower made sure that he killed them off. Right, that's a Salah moment. Eisenhower killed them. Eisenhower made sure he killed them off. Then he went over. We don't even think about Indonesia and stuff like that, and how this stuff affects Vietnam and other places. He went over and made sure that he stripped the Indonesian democracy. What we call democracy, what we call poor people. Basically, when we think democracy means that poor people are getting involved. So when you hear me say democracy, we've already broke down what democracy actually means. It's not what we think it does. But when you hear me say democracy, basically, we're saying that poor people are getting involved in decision making. You said like a monkey sticking the hands in the trap, they can't get free. Yeah, you put that salt in there, right? And that hand swells up, and they won't let go. Real talk. That's a great point, right? So, but yeah, Eisenhower went and he stripped Indonesia of poor people getting involved in democracy. When poor people said they wanted to participate, they wanted to be heard, and they started listening to him, he sent people to the outskirts of Indonesia to make sure that they were messing everything up and beating everything up and breaking everything down. But then when somebody like myself says we should start talking about having faith in something that gives us peace and long suffering and gentleness and stuff, and says, hey, get your own land so you can have some of those things. Well, they do that to other people's land. They tell us that we're wrong and how dare you decree that. But why is it wrong for us to say that we should take care of ourselves? Right? Next president after that, who's next? Kennedy. The person that everybody became, all these black people have become, the black population has become Democrats and stayed Democrats. And I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, right? But the black population has started voting Democrat as a majority ever since Kennedy. And really it's supposed to be because he was the one that allowed the March on Washington. That's as simple as it gets. Now for some people they would say that's not simple. That's a great thing. Until you realize and recognize. You can even look up Malcolm X talking about this. This is before Malcolm and Martin started trying to become friends. But look up what Malcolm X teaches us about that, and then look up and see what he's saying is true about the Big Six and things like that. There was a grassroots movement that was about to happen in Washington, D.C., where people were tired of the United States corporation. Thanks for being part of the community. Is it Nikki? Thanks for being part of the community. So what they were going to do is they were going to send all these black folk from all over the country, some from all over the world, were getting ready to come specifically to Washington, D.C., They were going to lay down in what you now call Ronald Reagan International Airport, which is a terrible name for anything, right? Matter of fact, Huey off, I don't believe this because it's not 666, it's 603 score and 6, but Huey off of the Boondocks would tell you that Ronald Reagan is the devil because he's got six characters in each, or six letters or characters in each name, right? But it's a terrible name. If once we get to Reagan, you'll find out all the things that Reagan has done. Not all. I don't have time to go through all the stuff that all these presidents have done. but but basically, the people were going to go to Ronald Reagan, what we now call Ronald Reagan International Airport. Black people were willing to lay down on the ground so that planes couldn't take off. They were going to chain themselves to certain places. They were going to riot. They might have even tried to do a September, or what was that? Sorry, January 6, 2021. They might have tried to do something like that back in the day. Thanks for being part of the community, Derek. They were looking at all these different things that they were thinking about doing. Right? That's what was going to happen. The corporations found out this was going to happen. They talked to Kennedy about it. Right? So they said, hey, Kennedy, we need to figure out a way to do this. That's when they hired, well, didn't hire him yet, but that's when they brought in MLK, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., to speak about what was going on. And they said, hey, all these things about to happen, you need to call this off. And he basically said, look, I didn't start this. I can't really call off what I didn't start because he wasn't a part of it. Eventually, though, what happens is they say, well, we'll put money behind it. We'll make sure because they were having struggles with some of the stuff they were trying to do. So it's a little bit of cognitive dissonance, right? We can't say that every person made every right decision every time in their life. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he needs to be able to operate certain things. They're losing a little bit of money. They don't have as much cash flow. They're not. They thought they would be successful in this stuff, and we shall overcome, and they haven't really overcome yet. So he, in a moment of weakness, is like, okay. And he has this group called the Big Six. Look them up. They come together. They have a meeting. They're funded by this millionaire, which would have been like a billionaire today. The guy had enough money that if you translated to today, he would have been like a billionaire. This millionaire comes and says, I'll fund you and do this, blah, blah, whatever. He's kind of sitting on the same table. Like, what happens? Don't forget NAACP until this year, was it? It was either this year or last year. But it wasn't until recently that the NAACP's first, not chapter president, but first president of the whole thing, this is the first year that it's been a black person. So it's always been a white person telling you what to do or a corporation telling you what to do. You said, what do you know about the number of the Antichrist? It's 616, not 666. Okay, well, real briefly on that, we teach that in class too, right? And we've shown it on the board in some of these lives. I don't have time to go into it today. But real briefly, 603 score and 6 and 610 and 6 are basically just the same word or the same name in two different languages. If you write it out in Hebrew, the number of the name, you get Never Kesar, right? Which is like Nero Caesar. But in Greek, they don't use the fourth letter. So and each number it's the number of a name. Because in our culture, we didn't have like the numeric value that they say now, like the number system in Israel and Hebrew, right, and even in Greek, right, which copied off the alphabet. So their alphabet copied off of us. We didn't have every character had a numerical value. So when you add it up, you get 603 scoring 6. When you take away the fourth character, which is the character none, we might even call it the letter N. The second letter N or the second character none that would have been written out. When you spell it out in the Greek, they take that away. So that character's value is the number 50. So you have 603 scoring 6 in Hebrew when you spell it out. And then when you subtract it by that 50 in Greek, because they don't spell out with that fourth character, then you get 616. They're talking about the same name or the same spirit. Okay, but I'll try to go. I can't go any further in that, right? But we are aware of that, yeah. So if it's the same thing, it's not a fight as which one is more relevant. It's actually just trying to say the same name in two different languages. It was said in Hebrew initially, so that's why 603 scoring 6. People started picking up on Greco-Romantic ideas, so now they say 616. You're talking about the same name. Okay, I'm sorry. What is it? Thanks for being part of the community, Brooklyn Zone. So here we go. So you have what they're doing over there, and basically MLK gets paid to be able to try and go over. He still though has certain ideals that he brings to the table. So he still, if you hear him when he's marching and stuff, you hear him saying, "Hey, we're coming for our check." So that was they were fed up and they wanted some kind of payment. The initial ground movement. So some of that groundswell still made it in, right? But it wasn't exactly what it was supposed to be in the first place. right? But ever since then, people have said, okay, we're going to vote Democrat because they did this great thing. Kennedy did this great thing, but Kennedy actually messed up what your people were going to do and made sure he paid one of us, right, to help out. That one of us not necessarily, I think, did a lot of it in ignorance, but nevertheless did a little bit of damage unknowingly, which was why later on he'll say, man, you know what, I think I led my people into a burning house. I wanted so bad for this to happen, but when we had segregation, we had our own businesses. When we had segregation, we had our own clients. When we had segregation, hey, they didn't like us, but we loved ourselves. Right now, all of a sudden, the white man's ice tastes colder. He said, I think I led my people into a burning house. But going back to Kennedy, Kennedy did what? Kennedy invaded South Vietnam, which, by the way, once again, is already being, he's just continuing what Eisenhower did. Eisenhower was already doing it. This is your president who people vote for. He invaded South Vietnam. Why does always everybody always talk about Johnson with Vietnam and never talk about Kennedy? And why don't they talk about Eisenhower? And why don't they talk about before Eisenhower that they were already over there? Why don't they tell you that still to this day people are over there? You're going to see Vietnam and Indonesia and stuff like that and China coming up with a lot of this stuff over and over and over again. Right? Thanks for being part of the community, GPD. Right? How you doing, Jay Stacks? Long time no talk to you. Better when we made our own bootstraps. That's a word right there. You get me stuck on MLK if I go down that rabbit hole, but that's a word right there, right? So, as we continue to go through this, right, we can see that there's these people are setting the precedent. Okay, thank you, Severe Flow, appreciate it. So, Kennedy said, "What invaded? We invade South Vietnam, or I'm sorry, with Kennedy, we invaded South Vietnam, and just continued with Eisenhower did. I'm sorry, I said we as if I was part of it. Kennedy sent folk in there to do that, right? Right? Kennedy sent folk in there. Before there were French people living there, before any of that stuff, they were trying to control South Vietnam, right? They were trying to do that already. North Vietnam and South Vietnam, they were trying to control Vietnam. They had already sent people in there. So of course the people in the north, they're gonna be fighting against the people in the south. Because the people in the South are working for the United States, or the United States is using the South to come up in there. But we will teach that North Vietnam, Vietnamese said, "Yo, we're going to protect ourselves by any means necessary," and we said that they were the bad guy. He said Kennedy sent his mistress Monroe to sugarcoat. Yeah, yeah. I say yeah the way I'm saying it because I don't know how great a person that was to try and sugarcoat it, but it is what it is, right? And thanks for the love, Shalon, and thank you for the love. I'm sorry, I meant to, was it Brother Clem and Cynthia? I'm sorry, Cynthia said, yeah, okay, yeah. Thank you, Sister Cynthia, for the comment. So he did that right now. So what else did he did? He also watch this. Do you know? Do you know that he um, actually authorized napalm to be used? You know how people talk bad about Saddam Hussein? We were talking about that yesterday. They say Saddam Hussein is so terrible because he used this colorless stuff and all these different things, colorless gas with no odor and all this, and he was bombing people and he hurt the people that were Kurds and all these different things and things that Hitler himself would have never done these things. Kennedy, by the way, who wrote in a journal, it's out for public consumption. You could actually read his journal and you can see that he said that Adolf Hitler would be remembered as a hero. Because don't forget that his father, Jack Kennedy, who came from a family of bootleggers and got basically put on there when the bootleggers said, hey, we ain't get rid of alcohol, so make alcohol legal again and put our family up in there. And Jack Kennedy wanted to become president, realized he couldn't, and then said, well, I'm going to get my son up in there. So they straight, not only was it private corporations, it was straight gang warfare. Right, that's what the Kennedy family is. I know you want to make them all these things. They straight gangsters out here, right? Right? Real talk. They straight gangsters out here. But but they literally authorized napalm usage. To be honest, with Kennedy versus the CIA, I had to think about that a little bit, and I don't know if I'm in that area. I don't know if I know enough. To be honest with you, I would be making guesses and opinions. I try to stay away from opinions as much as possible, though. Give me a sec. I'll see if I can come up with something while I'm talking. But but yeah. So like, he authorized napalm usage on food. Thank you, Toshiba. right? He did it on what? Authorized it on food. They talking about that Saddam used it on people. He used it on food so people couldn't eat. And we talking about North Vietnam shouldn't have. North Vietnam was like if you're bombing somebody's food and you're gonna win. Like if I'm fighting against somebody who's bombing my food, I got to be ready to fight on levels that nobody has ever seen before. That's why the North Vietnamese fought the way that they did. If you're gonna bomb my food, I got to be ready to go to levels that nobody's seen before. I'm glad you came on too, Eugene. Appreciate it. Thanks for being part of the community bundle of grace. Right? Like we don't think about that though. It's like when people talk about Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor was so terrible what they did. They attacked Japan. You know, Japan could have kept on coming. You know that, right? Like you know, Japan really wanted. They actually made a mistake. They miscalculated because President uh, Roosevelt, FDR, he wanted to fight the whole time, and Jack Kennedy, who was a Hitler sympathizer, wouldn't was one of the people that wouldn't let it happen. Not JFK, but JFK's father, right? But a lot of people don't know that the Japanese had sent spies or whatever to see if America. They thought their spies had told them that America was an isolationist country, which they were, and they said, "Hey, you know, we can send people over. They don't have a heart for war." And they came by and they hit Pearl Harbor, and they were thinking about Cali and continue to move on and on and on because back then they didn't have the radar and capability to be able to tell. Like the mainland found out about what's going on. Washington D.C. found out what's going on like many hours after what happened. So they could have continued to just come on and really rocked everything that was there, took over Hawaii, and just said like y'all finished out here. Like we got Hawaii. Y'all try to come out here, we gonna mess y'all up. Matter of fact, the ships that are left over, we'll just go ahead and like take those and make them our own. They could have really messed stuff up. But their intent, the reason why Japan attacked the United States of America was not because they're just bad people, because they were Axis powers. You know, you gotta be careful. George Bush even tried to use that in a speech. That's why he got y'all to think that it was okay to go ahead and go over into, you know, Iraq and go after Saddam Hussein and kill him, even though he grew up with Saddam, basically, right? Or at least his father grew. No, sorry, his father grew up around Osama, but he and his father were friends, basically, with Saddam. Had no problem with it because the enemy of my enemy is my friend. You know, but he said, "Oh yeah, this is an axis of evil." He was quoting what they called Japan, Italy, and Germany back in the day, right? Fighting with each other, these Axis powers, right? But the reason why Japan came was because that the United States of America had submarines in Japanese territory and were going ahead and messing around and spying on them and stuff like that. And the Japanese were like, America said they're supposed to be out the war. But we know that they're sending weapons and troops, low key, over to Germany. I mean, I'm sorry, over to the Brits and things like that, and people fighting in France and stuff to make sure that they can go against Germany. And now we seeing that they got submarines in our area. So they talked to their spies and they said, okay, they ain't ready for us. We're gonna go ahead and blitz them one time just to let them know don't mess with us. Now it ended up being a miscalculation on their part, obviously, but that's why they attacked because they were like, y'all keep lying and saying you're not part of this war, but we keep seeing y'all over here, right? So same thing happened in North Vietnam. We think that the Vietnamese War starts, and we give Johnson, Lyndon B. Johnson, all this hell and everything for it, and give Ford all this hell and everything for it, and Nixon all this hell and everything for it. The reality is that it had started with JFK, who was working for these private corporations who were trying to make sure that they control Vietnam. And when these private corporations, especially people that were trying to make money, were using the warfare that we were and were making stuff that was napalming their food, they said, "Oh, if that's how you fight, then yeah, we're gonna use mines and we'll blow up our own people and we'll eviscerate you and we'll do guerrilla warfare." Right, the same guerrilla warfare, by the way, that they celebrated is interesting with North Vietnam. How dare they do guerrilla warfare? That's the same guerrilla warfare that you guys who were trying to make the Americas your nation and fighting against England. That's the same guerrilla warfare you used. Same guerrilla warfare, yeah, and they're still over there now, of course, right? So I'm just saying, like you'll see a lot of stuff. You got to be careful. Also, too, here's something about Kennedy. Kennedy gets all this play for saying that he stopped the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? But the only reason the Cuban Missile Crisis happened is because it was international terrorism. You know, the first place um, that Cuba went, right? Whether you're talking about Guevara or you're talking about did I say Guevara? I'm sorry. who's the guy I'm looking for? I'm getting names running together. Well, anyways, whether you're talking about the person that came right before Castro or Castro himself, right? Who was the first person that they went to trying to get help from? Was it Russia? Okay, thank you. We appreciate your help yesterday here, right? Who was the first person that Cuba went to for help? It was the United States of America. You know why the United States of America didn't help them? They said because even though you're trying to be one of us, we didn't want your regime to win. We wanted the other one to win, right? You think it's about democracy. Castro and them didn't have no food no more. And there were all these other countries, including the United States of America, putting sanctions and stuff on them. Yo, we need somebody to help us. Can you guys help us? We'll be a democratic country. They said no, we ain't with y'all. We was with the person that beat y'all. We can care less if y'all die on. That's why Castro is so loved by a lot of black people in Africa. A lot of people don't know that, right? Castro was loved by a lot of African nations. Yeah, right? Castro was loved by a lot of African nations. You know why? Because there's Cuban blood spilled for us fighting for freedom. There's Cuban blood spilled in Ghana and in Kenya and in South Africa, right? And in the Republic of Congo and in Nigeria. There's Cuban blood spilled because they sent their soldiers over to fight because a lot of us, first place we went asking for help, same place, United States of America. Y'all supposed to be the beacon of light and hope and all the stuff that you say. We come over to you first. We say, please help us. You won't help us? Well, okay, fine. We're going to go to Cuba. We'll go to Russia. We'll go to Cuba. We'll go to somebody. Somebody help us. We've been sitting up here underneath this totalitarian regime, these sick, demented people that you call kings and queens over Europe, these sick, demented people that you call capitalists who are really nothing more than kings and queens using private corporations as a way to be able to rule your country. And we and now here we are where you've messed us up, took away knowledge of self, told us we was nothing. We still fought through. We still remained married. We still had children. We didn't let you kill us off. Now we're here. We're asking for the very people who did this to help us. It sounds like reparations, don't it? The very people that messed us up. We'd like for you to be able to help us out. And you say, oh, no, we wanted the enemy to win. Republic of Congo gets free. All of a sudden, they say, hey, on our way out, we'd like it. You know, Belgium says, we'd like it if you could make sure that even though you guys cut our hands off of children, and even though you took all of our natural resources, and even though you had to reteach your soldiers, you put them back in boot camp before you send them over because you wanted to teach them that even though we look like human beings and speak like human beings, you told them that we're not human beings, so it's okay to kill us off. Even though you did all those things, hey, we want Lumumba, we want you to make sure that on the way out, can you make sure that you give a nice speech about King Leopold III on the way out? And Lumumba didn't say anything bad about Leopold, but his speech basically went along the lines of, we know that there were a lot of atrocities that happened. We've been able to move past it, and we're thankful that we are able to have our freedom. So and that was kind of it. So because he didn't suck up to King Leopold III, not only did Belgium come back on the low, but they brought who? They said, hey, United States, because United States, we didn't want y'all to have freedom anyway. They said, United States, can you give us some help with the CIA? Sent the CIA in, tore everything up, and made it worse than what it was during the apartheid season. So it's still apartheid, it's still apartheid going on, but made it worse. Right? So when they tell us all these things, Cuba was going under. Cuba was dealing with what? International terrorism. They fought for their freedom, and then they looked up to the people that said, hey, we're supposed to be the people to help people get freedom. They said, okay, cool, we're free, but our people are going through terrible times. So you know what? What happens with Castro? Castro says, bump it then. If that's the way y'all going to work this thing, fine. I'll become, I'll line up with Russia because Russia at least will give us some stuff. Oh, and by the way, Russia, why don't you go ahead? It was a Russian idea, right? Was it Gorbachev? I'm not sure which one. Russians said, we'll send you guys some bombs and we'll put them there in Cuba. And that way, what goes on, we can have some staying power. We can make America scared, and they'll have to treat us different because Russia kept bragging about how they had this technology as far as, that could go anywhere, hit anybody in the world. But the reality was is that their nuclear weapons were trash back then. right? Like in comparison, especially in comparison to what the United States of America had, especially just in the state of Montana. The state of Montana filled up with nothing but nuclear weapons. JFK, Kennedy actually said, like, hey, what is America's number one thing that can be used against anybody else? Montana. He told you straight up. Right? You can actually look at this. He said it in the speech. Montana is our greatest defense against anybody, right? Because still to this day, at any time somebody want to pop off at the mouth, hey, Montana, there's a part of Montana that'll open up, and the floodgates are coming out, right? The floodgates will open rather, and hell's coming with it, right? Like till this day, right? Like the boxer said, to this day. He said Deontay Wilder said that to this day, you know. But you're dealing with Cuba, we're dealing with international terrorism. And they finally won, and they said, can you help us? And they said, we didn't want you to win in the first place. Right? You were taught the story that Castro was just a bad guy. So at that point, Castro makes a decision because in his own nation, now you're dealing with colorism and stuff too. In his own nation, there's these white folk who really don't like, who wanted the people who were allowed them to be rich and be over people and stuff. They wanted them to win. It's not as cut and dry as what I'm saying here, and if I be in all honesty, right? So that's why you got to research these things. But basically, you got people that were attached to the old regime that ain't getting the stuff that they want anymore because hey, we got to strip everybody under the guise of capitalism. That's what we got to do. So all we don't have any wealth. People aren't eating. People this, and it's still the same way. You go to Cuba right now, like not only should you be careful in certain places, but there's a lot of places that'll be fine if you go to Cuba. But you got to be careful because you might not be able to put gas in your car for 2-3 days. Real talk. Like that's how long the lines are just to get gas. Because there's still embargoes on them as much as they say America and Cuba are working things out. They still can't get gas over there. Like that's like how much it is. It's still international terrorism, but then they're trying to figure out why. Like if you put somebody in a situation to where they gotta deal with animalistic, behavior, why do you get mad when they act like animals? You said your father visited. Mm. Yeah, so there's places you can go, but it's different. Next president up after Kennedy, who is that? That's Johnson, Lyndon B. Johnson, right? But Lyndon B. Johnson, he took what Kennedy did, and then he not only was involved, obviously, in the Vietnam War, right, which I think we talked about enough, but he expanded the war into China. People say, why China against us, this and that, or whatever. He expanded the war into China. China took a side because they were forced to take a side. You threw the war into China. They're going to talk about the Chinese. China was trying to remember the time. Remember the time frame. China was dealing with what Japan did to them, right? Then had to recover from that from World War II. When did World War II end? Right, depending on who you talk to, 1944 to 1948, depending on who's there. Some people were still fighting, not even knowing the war had ended, right? But 1944 to 1948, something like that. Okay, so all right, so it ends there. Kennedy was president in the 60s. He was killed, right? He was shot. He was assassinated in 63. So Johnson becomes president right after that, continuing the stuff in Vietnam, expands it into China. So that means that Japan and so China, who was dealing with the Japanese, like messing them up real bad, and other people now trying to take over stuff, and then people in China who are warlords now trying to take over things. They're trying to recover that and get back to what they were, and trying to have some semblance of everybody coming together. And then meanwhile, so they're dealing with that 1944 to 48. So let's say like 1944 to 48. So let's just say 1945. Let's say it takes them, it takes decades, but let's just say they were really fast and they were able to get rid of it instead of 2 decades. Maybe they were able to catch up in 1 decade. That's 1955. Then all of a sudden you start messing around in Vietnam and you expand stuff into them in 1960s. Like, and they've seen that you jacked up Indonesia, that you're using tactics to napalm people's food, and that you're coming up through North Vietnam. Now you start attacking them. Why do you think China gonna be nice to you? You said that the banks be getting problems and some countries can't withdraw. Yeah, but we could even talk about that too. There's a whole thing within itself, right? You said you need to change your intro to accept instead of accept. Oh, okay, fine. Thank you for finding the mistake. I appreciate it. So, but besides the mistake, any so the stuff that we're talking about, so I get it, and that's a great thing because I guess if I make one mistake, it means that I don't know anything to a lot of people. That's real talk. But as far as what we're talking about today, with Johnson, right? With Johnson, it says what? Expanded war into China, right? I'm sorry, that's what Johnson did. He expanded war into China. I'm looking at my notes. He expanded the war into China, and as soon as he did it, how many people died because of that war that was expanded into China, right? How many people died because of that war that expanded into China? 3 to 4 million people died. These are all things that go against the Nuremberg trials. These are all these things that I'm mentioning. They are war crimes. Why is it that none of these presidents are being talked about as criminals? Every last one of them. And they represent somebody because, right, because it's the private corporations that tell them what to do. No, no, no. I hear you. That's why I said thank you. I appreciate it because I know there's some people that probably won't listen past, a mistake. So it's already changed. But I appreciate it. So, and thanks for being part of the community, Julius. So what I'm saying is like you got to recognize you're trying to be in a system. You got to come out of a system, a way of thought. Like it's a necessity. People keep saying, "What am I going to do? Give me all the stuff." Where you don't have any change. First things first, change your mentality. These are all war criminals, and your mindset. A lot of our mindset, not your, but a lot of people. Let's be honest. A lot of our mindset as humanity is, well, you ain't doing nothing to change nothing. First of all, we have things that we already are implementing, right? And you can be a part of those things if you want. However, before you even become a part of it, I would prefer that you change your mindset and stop looking at town destroyers or war criminals or who you call presidents who are setting the precedence for evil. Stop looking at them as, well, I got to vote for the lesser of two evils, or this is what it is. Stop stop talking it. See, in my mind, you say, hey, don't talk about it unless you don't vote or unless you vote on it. My whole thing is, if you don't speak against it, or you say, hey, I'll vote for it even though I know it to be evil, then you're doing evil. I don't uplift evil. We don't uplift evil. Why are we doing so? You said, do you think we can get depression from sleeping with someone with mental health issues? Um, I would say yes overall. I'm sorry, I'm not able to really focus on that right now. If you want to maybe put it in the Q&A box, possibly at the end, which we're coming up on. We got to start getting ready to take our leave. So possibly at the end of this, we can come back and circle back to that if you want. I got to focus on the stuff, but yeah, anybody that you're attached to in any way, shape, or form, you can take on forms of what they're doing, which ultimately brings us back to our point, is that we're sleeping, so to speak, with a country that has mental health issues, that we're looking to try and make sure that we are sane, and that's probably very insane. Yes, it's easy for some to stay blind. If you acknowledge it, you'll have to do something, right? Because at some point, cognitive dissonance works itself out to where to prevent you from either to prevent you from going crazy or preventing you from having to lie to yourself, you will have to correct behavior, right? You will have to correct behavior, right? So Johnson just sent, because remember, Kennedy gets shot, Johnson then takes over the last bit of Kennedy stuff. Johnson wins. Matter of fact, Johnson. One of the things about Kennedy too. So let's even look at how these people run for president. Starting with Kennedy, Kennedy is the first president that actually runs. Well, Nixon, who was the vice president at the time, coming out of he was Eisenhower's vice president, and then Kennedy, who was running for president on the Democratic side. Uh, Nixon is coming out there, and Kennedy. They have for the first time ever, they actually do a live presidential debate on television. Thanks for being part of the community, Cook. And so they do a live presidential debate on television. And the reason why Kennedy wins ultimately had nothing to do with the fact that people thought Kennedy was ready to go, that he was prepared. It ultimately is because of how he presented himself, advertised himself. He was the first presidential candidate to actually have their family on television, right? So he wanted people to see that he wasn't too young, right? So he did certain things on there. And during the live debate, Nixon sweated. And so the thing they were putting up about Nixon is that Nixon was always guilty, which at the time had no relevance, but now we know later on, you know, because of Watergate, it had relevance. But at the time, really had no relevance. They were just putting that out there. And Nixon actually had a problem with sweating, period. He was unhealthy, and he had a problem with sweating. So since he was always having a problem with sweating, what happened with Nixon is that Kennedy's team actually, and so the corporations who put these people in place, they actually made sure that the heat was turned up during the debate. And so everybody that watched on television, which was this newish thing. Remember, television is still in the '60s. It's still kind of new for everybody to have a television in the house. Not everybody has one yet, but now everybody's starting to get one. So it's this new thing, like, hey, let's run to the television and watch these two guys. One of them's going to be the president. And what they did was, on purpose, they turned up the temperature, knowing Nixon had. And I'm not making this up. I'm talking about stuff you can just research. You can look. It's in plain reading, right? You can read this for yourself. They turned up the temperature on purpose so that Nixon would look like he was sweating. They had already put out the narrative that he's a guilty person of all these different things. And so and Nixon was so turned off by this that when he lost, he actually dropped out of politics. That's why you don't see him become the president right after. It goes to John. He doesn't run against Johnson. He had dropped out of politics altogether. They asked for Nixon to come back because Kennedy and Johnson had messed up stuff so bad that they were like, yo, if you just come back and run, people want to go back to the days of Eisenhower, make America great again type thing. Just like they did with Reagan and Trump. Hey, people will say that these people messed up stuff so bad they want to just go back to the time that when white men were in charge. So that's what they did, right? so, so that was the first time that they did a presidential debate, and that's how Kennedy won. Matter of fact, this is how important it was back then, because a lot of people still listen to the radio. I can't even tell you last time I listened to the radio for real, for real. I listen to podcasts, but that's the closest I do, right? But back then, it was so crucial. But this is so messed up. I'm doing. We're talking about president setting precedent. So, and why we need to be away from that system of thinking that presidents really have power, so we can gain some power for ourselves. But if you look at Nixon, I'm sorry. Yeah. So if you look at, I'm sorry, if you look at what happened with the radio, what happened with the radio at that time is that everybody who listened on the radio and just listened to the words, didn't watch it, just listened. They said that Nixon actually was more suited to be president. But everybody that watched on television, they said that it was there. Okay, well, his story, you can call it white people history, this and that, or whatever. His story is his story. I'm talking about the story, and I don't mind talking about our story. We do that quite often, right? But I get it. If that's what we need to make it to make you, if that's satisfying to call it whatever it is, call it whatever you like. But we're going to make the main thing the main thing. So we're dealing with these things that happen, right? And so now, so now here comes Johnson later on. What does Johnson do? I forget the name of the guy Johnson ran against. But basically Johnson's running against this guy, and what Johnson does is he uses advertising for the first time, but uses it in a way that we never really thought about it. He makes a commercial because the guy he's running against, this Republican he's running against, starts talking about that, hey, we might have to use nuclear weapons at some point. He mentions it. He's not driving this home, but he's mentioning it, right? He's mentioning it. Thank you for the love, Urban. So he's just mentioning, like, this might be a thing we might have to look into because you're dealing with what? Russia versus America. So you're dealing with something that everybody knew about. So he talked about it, like, what happens if we need to use it? We shouldn't be afraid of using it. Johnson's people, right, working for the corporations. It was Goldwater. Thank you. I didn't think it was Goldwater. I was thinking Goldwater was going against somebody else. Okay, so it was Goldwater. I always remember Goldwater because for some reason I linked Goldwater to Gold Member. It's weird how you memorize stuff. But anyways, I thought Goldwater was somebody else. But cool. Okay, so he was going against Goldwater, and Goldwater's talking about, yeah, we might have to use nuclear weapons. Nixon is like, or I'm sorry, not Nixon. Johnson, what they do is they make a commercial. They have a little girl who's plucking off, you know how people used to do flowers, and he loves me not, he loves me, he loves me not, he loves me. Well, she's counting numbers, and she's a little girl. She can't count that well, right? So she's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 6, 9, 10. And when she looks up at the camera, they pause it on her face, and then they have this very robotic voice saying 10, 9, 8, 7, acting like it's counting down to a bomb going off. And then when it gets to 1, and then when it hits 1, all of a sudden right after, they show a nuclear bomb going up, right? And so like, and that's what they did, and so they used television once again, right? Now, um, Johnson ain't shown that that doesn't show he's great, this and that or whatever. All the guy said was, "Yo, we dealing with Russia. Russia talking about possibly doing some nuclear weapon stuff. We just went through the Cuban Missile Crisis. We might want to, because JFK himself was talking about using some stuff against them too. We might want to consider doing this." Right, and all they did was put a commercial that scared the mess out of everybody, and therefore Johnson won. I think he got 60% of the vote, something like that. And then did the stuff we talked about, killed millions over there, expanded the war into China, right, and then supported Israeli occupation. So when Israel started saying we're gonna be real bold and we're gonna start really going against this stuff, and we're gonna really start doing this stuff against the Palestinians, he supported it wholeheartedly. These presidents set precedent. But people vote and they say, oh yeah, it's the lesser of two evils. Stop thinking that you need to be about evil. There's more than watch this. All these things I keep saying this. When no president, no presidential candidate has never came to your house and done this. What do you need? Never. Well, they do a census. The census ain't here to take care of you. They are not here to take care of you. You must start working on taking care of yourself and coming together as a people. You said somebody said the devil can't reside inside you. They have serious mental issues. Yeah, that's facts. That's real. All right. Next up is Nixon. I don't even know how much we really need to talk about Nixon. I think Nixon's, the way his presidency ended speaks for itself. Oh wow, thank you, Sister Cynthia. I appreciate that. You can look for my wife on TikTok, YouTube, or website and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. Not A and D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. So take off the letter A, take off the letter D. Bloom and Flourish. Right? Or you can just contact me, look up on our TikTok. If you're on TikTok, YouTube, we put the stuff on later on the information or in the description box as well. But if you're on YouTube, just go to our main page. Where you say info, look right underneath that. That's the website. Click on the link for the website. You'll see a link tree pop up. Find a way to be able to get in contact with us, and I'll make sure that you get your information. I'm on, right? Um, but yeah, so Nixon, we can see just by the way his stuff ended. But then also after they had expanded stuff into China, and Nixon was fighting this war and expanding stuff into China, guess what Nixon then goes and does? Now, a lot of people say, oh, Nixon went over to China and he smoothed things over and he started having it to where we could talk back and forth with one another. No, not necessarily. He went over to talk to Chinese elites, right? And he said, okay, we'll stop fighting with you guys. We're still going to fight in Indonesia. We're still going to fight in Vietnam. But we'll stop fighting with you guys so much as far as putting troops and everything there and us going back and forth. Thank you, Skate, for being part of the community. Appreciate it. So, so this, that's what happened after the fact. But Nixon was still causing these wars. Nixon was still messing around with these places. Nixon was still out here saying that it was important. Matter of fact, Nixon was the one that groomed Reagan. We don't even recognize even these presidents that set precedent. You connect them, right? Nixon was against Kennedy, but ended up doing the same thing Kennedy did. So if Kennedy had been president when, I'm sorry, if Nixon had been president when Kennedy was, if Nixon actually won when he should have, then guess what would have happened? The same thing that Kennedy did. He did the same thing. But people are stuck on this thing of, oh, it's about Republican, Democrat, president. No, like get yourself out of the mindset that you need to attach yourself to a wicked system. Your pain is their pleasure. Your pain is what they make money off of. It's been the same thing. It's been capitalism against chattel slavery. And all these presidents that I'm talking about, even in the modern story, they still use capitalism to allow chattel slavery. Come out of her. Come out of that mindset. Right? Nixon would have done the same thing. He did the same thing. He continued the same thing Kennedy did. Because guess what? Their goal, once again, their goal is not to take care of you. Their goal is to do what? To support and defend the Constitution of the United States. The United States Corporation is more important than you. Now, you can become part of the United States Corporation, a lot of you are. But their goal is not to be a part of you. They have all their foreign and domestic policies are to make sure that capitalism and chattel slavery stay consistently stay in place. All the presidents have the same bloodline, sure. You said dual party system is a lie. Okay, most def, right? So all those things we're talking about, Just be ready, right? Next president up after Nixon is Ford. Next president after Nixon is Ford. What did Ford do? Ford endorsed Indonesian invasion of East Timor. Basically, it was genocide. He kept up the same things, kept up the Indonesian stuff, kept up the Vietnam stuff, but he also authorized to make sure that genocide happened in Timor or Timor. I think it's Timor. The Timor, one of them, right? Ford also used ambassador, and I'm going to mispronounce his name. Is it Mayanahem? And he instructed him to render the UN um, ineffective, which was successful in killing hundreds of thousands. And the important part about that is this: that basically they came out after the end and they said, "Oh yeah, everything that happened. This is what America did. Everything that happened in East Timor was terrible. Blah blah. We should have never done it. This and that." But when you look in history, even the UN, even the U.S. ambassador said that, "Hey, my responsibility was to make sure that the UN could not." So when he went to the UN meetings, his whole goal was to make sure that he messed everything up so bad that they could not actually step in and help East Timor and allow for people to be killed off, hundreds of thousands of people. Ford wasn't even in that long, right? Ford came in because of Nixon, right? And Ford wasn't even in there that long, but it got all that stuff done. These are our presidents, setting precedent. Thank you, Leanne. Appreciate it. Who's up next? Carter. Carter, the same Carter that everybody says, oh, he was golly gee, oh shucks, he was a nice little farmer boy from Georgia, which just that in and of itself should have raised some alarms for y'all. Oh, he still builds homes to this day. And I'm not saying these people have no righteousness in them at all, right? I'm not saying they don't have any righteousness in them at all, but we got to be careful with this stuff, right? What did Carter do? Carter continued the same stuff in Indonesia. People don't talk enough about Indonesia. That's you need to do some stuff on what America did in Indonesia, and then you'll begin to see how crazy this stuff is, and see that if they willing to do it to Indonesia, see we had this reverse. We think that they'll do it to foreigners, but won't do it to you. If they're willing to do it to Indonesians, and you've been living here longer than they've been doing it to Indonesians, why don't you think they do it to you? Anyways, Carter gave weapons to Indonesia. Let me say that again. He gave weapons to Indonesia. What did he do again? He gave weapons to Indonesia, to the places in Indonesia that were faithful to what America wanted to happen. Thanks for being part of the community. Best brain, and what was that? Tony. Appreciate it. Or Tonya. Tanya. Sorry. Tanya Emanuel. Sorry about that. Right? What else did Carter do? He got Israel. I want you to comprehend this. See, this is how in league with these people they are. The people that they tell you are Israel. This is how league with evil everybody's in. You ready for this? He got who you call nowadays Israel to send U.S. Skyhawks to Indonesia. So not only did they send the U.S. send weapons, but Carter was given instructions to make sure that he was able to do what? To make sure that not only Skyhawks were sent to Indonesia, I mean weapons were sent to Indonesia, but he went to Israel, which and told them send Skyhawks. But here's the deal: send U.S. Skyhawks, which means that the United States of America was giving Israel all its weapons and said, okay, hey, send these U.S. Skyhawks that we gave you, send a few of them over to these people in Indonesia so that they can take care of their business. That's what he did. Salah. You can be mad about it all you want. Thank you for the love. Appreciate it. That's what Carter did. He just, he's just a good old Southern hunter. But there's a connection in this stuff. We don't even know how this stuff is connected. They got, they, well, we'll find out more about it in a second. Because watch this. Carter won a Nobel Peace Prize. Now, I just told you what he did. Right? Y'all heard what he did? Spicy, you said, yeah, they send Israel the money and the weapons so they can tell them to do the deeds they need done. Yeah, and then tell you and I that worship them as, and watch this. So the same people who are them, right? The 1%, 1% of 1%, the same people who sold slaves, the same people, they said, hey, oh, these are really the chosen people of Israel. And remember, who authorized for them to get it? The Rothschild family. It's the Rothschild star on the Israel flag. There is no Star of David, no such thing. So it's the Cyberlock, which is really the Rothschild crest as well. It's the Rothschild star that's on that flag. And who helped the Rothschild family to make sure that they got what they wanted? Who was it that was used by them? It was England, France, Russia, till Russia broke camp a little bit, but Russia, and then who else? United States of America. And then they sent their own people over there and said they're the chosen people. And now they send their own weapons and money over there to fund their own needs, which means that all they did was they sent the same 1% of 1% of the 1%, lied to you and told you that, hey, they're the people that are Israel, and then said y'all should support them no matter what. And you fell for it. So I got Israel to send. So we got Israel to send the U.S. Skyhawks to Indonesia. Then Carter went around, turned around, and won the Nobel Peace Prize. Hear what I'm saying? We just talked about what he did already. We didn't even get to everything that we're gonna talk about with Carter. But he won the Nobel Peace Prize, right? And this is why he won the Nobel Peace Prize for the Camp David agreements. Now do some research on the Camp David agreements. You guys probably have heard of Camp David. You probably heard of this place that the presidents go, right? You probably heard of Camp David and this place that the presidents go. Wanna have some fun? Okay, go ahead. So, you probably heard of the Camp David agreements and these places where the presidents go. But you probably don't know what the Camp David agreement even was. Yeah, I could try and go on in every single place, right? By the way, I don't do Middle East. The Middle East is Africa, Syria, and all that is Africa, where Sheba was. As a matter of fact, Africa, Asia, and Europe are not continents. They are all one continent together. They're peninsulas attached to the same thing, right? But we could, I could continue to go on. We could talk about everything. I mean, we've talked about Guatemala. I didn't even talk about. Oh, I didn't get to Reagan yet, so of course I didn't talk about that. But there's a lot of different stuff we can talk about, right? I could be here all day, but you're right. We can keep on going and going and going and going and going. Yes, I could, right? So, once again, study this stuff. He's talking about make sure you look at what he did in the Middle East and in the West Indies, or what we call those things, because there really was never any such thing as a West Indies, because there's not a West India, right? And there really is no such thing as a Middle East, because what they did is they said, okay, there's East and Far East and stuff that like Japan and stuff, and then we'll say anything in the middle is Middle East, right? But you guys get the gist, right? So Carter won a Nobel Peace Prize for the Camp David agreements. Israel accepted the Camp David agreements. Basically, was what Egypt had asked Israel to accept a long time ago. It's called Caribbean by other people who named it that. That's not even what it's initially called. Like some of my family who is Shwi, who came over from Africa, who mixed with Taino people that were there. Some people try to label us Arawak and things like that in that nature, which even connects, if you want to go even to the Olmec Shisam and stuff like that. I have Cherokee and things, and Cherokee are actually bigger than what people think as well. So I get you. But the main thing, I'm with you, right? I'm not trying to argue against each other over, making sure that, we can talk about have a whole thing if you want someday to say why we need to name it this or that or whatever, right? At the time, hopefully we're all in the same place, right? So, so Israel accepted Egypt's offer at this Camp David agreement. Now, when was Jimmy Carter president? Jimmy Carter president was what? He ran president in 1976, becomes president in 1977. Basically rolls out at the beginning of 1981. Okay, same thing pops up, right? Same thing pops up. So it's like, same. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Reason why I'm saying that is because we have to be in a position to do what? We have to be in a position to recognize that what Egypt was asking for in the agreement. Go do some research on it, because I could be all day just talking about the Camp David agreement. Go do some research on it, and you'll discover what? That this agreement was something Egypt had put out to them in 1971. So that means that this 1971, who was in charge in 1971? We're dealing with Nixon. So this person that everybody talks about was communicating, doing all these things, making things better. They didn't have this agreement. But here's why Israel accepted the Camp David agreement overall, right? You've heard about it, but you probably don't know. Long story short, they accepted it because America, so this Carter, who got a Nobel Peace Prize for this, Carter only, um, Carter only was able to get, hold on, help me hold this there so I bring this back to my remembrance. Okay, Carter was only able to get Israel to sign off on the dotted line by upping how much money they gave to Israel every year. So he upped the money that they gave Israel that year to over 50%. I hear you, right? He did it. He upped what they gave Israel to over 50%. Right? Think about that. Not up to. He didn't say he didn't raise it by 50%. Hear what I said, right? He upped the amount of money that Israel got out of what the United States of America gave to everybody around the world. He gave Israel more than 50% of that. So Israel was receiving more money than it took to fight wars. Hear what I'm telling you? Israel was receiving more money than it took to fight communism. He upped it. And then what did Israel do? They knew what Israel was going to do. They turned around and they started attacking their neighbors, their northern neighbors, Lebanese people, Palestinian people. They started getting more and more and more and started fighting. Everybody knew what they were going to do. It was the only way that they could get Israel to sign Egypt's agreement from 1971. And so that's what he did. And therefore he won. No, Nixon was the person that never got this stuff done, but was supposed to be this very good guy getting peace and stuff together. Nixon didn't get it done. Ford didn't get it done. Carter got it done, but he had to promise Israel that over 50% of what the United States of America uses around the world, as far as the foreign stuff, he upped it to where they got it's at least as far as war stuff. I might be going a little too far. I'd have to research it again. I'm pretty sure it's not just war stuff, but over 50%. So any kind of war that was going on around the world, if you put all of them together at that time, Israel was getting more money. And what did Israel do? Israel did what they said they were going to do. Nuclear weapons can be included too, right? Anything that's going on as far as anything funding something, Israel was going to get over 50%. So this is how what happened. Israel said that's the only way we're going to do it. Nixon capitulated, and he got a Nobel Peace Prize. And Israel did exactly what they said they were going to do. They used all the money that they received simultaneously. They used it as soon as they got it. They used it with immediacy, and they used it simultaneously. I'm saying simultaneously. I'm getting into other stuff because they were doing a bunch of stuff. I'm sorry. I'm using the wrong term though. They did it with immediacy. They did it with urgency. They did it in a bunch of different places simultaneously. They took the money and they said, okay, we got it. We're going to attack these northern borders and we're going to kill these people off. And the United States of America gave them that. And the world turned around and said, wow, that's so amazing that you got them to sign this thing with Egypt. Cool. You know what we'll do? Since you got them to sign something with Egypt, we'll go ahead and say that you get a Nobel Peace Prize. We still don't recognize what's going on today. We don't know what's going on. We're still fighting for precedents that set a terrible precedent. Come out of that. Come out of her. Thank you for the love. Appreciate it. Come out of her. You got to come out of that. You got to be willing to say speak what it is. All right, y'all ready? Next one up after that. Who comes next? Good old Ronald Reagan. He's the first president to run under Make America Great Again. You remember? Maybe you don't. I mean, I was only born in 1982, so I'm not going to act like I had all these fond memories. But just read a book and do some research. If you're of a certain age, all you got to probably be is, 1976 to remember? Maybe 4 years old to be able to remember? He ran on Make America Great Again. And they'll always try to tell you, stop forgetting the past. Don't bring up the past. Don't do this. Don't do that. Why are you bringing up the past so much? You said, is this liberation Christianity? Are you talking about what I'm teaching? We teach things that go past just liberation because we don't want you to just have certain liberties and not have freedom. But secondly, I'm not a Christian, so if that's what you're talking about. But Ronald Reagan ran on Make America Great Again. Yeah, well, you got to know it. That's the reason why they repeated on you. All they did was they brought back Make America Great Again. Matter of fact, if I were to make this clear to you, we've had everybody doing the same thing in the same places: Indonesia, China. Fine if we want to add this term in, even though it's not real, but the Middle East, um, um, places in Africa. I've mentioned several countries and several tribes. If you've been paying attention, we talked about South America, Guatemala. We're going to bring up Noriega in a second, or Noriega, right? But Noriega in a second. All these different things going on, right? We're missing You know, and we think that these are the same things. Like, but you got to look. Ronald Reagan. I said this yesterday. You can look online right now. Look up on YouTube. Ronald Reagan calling black people monkeys with Richard Nixon. Ronald Reagan. He literally. There's a phone call. We have it recorded. It's something that's out there for you to see. You can clearly hear them talking about it. And Ronald Reagan basically says, "Man, these monkeys out here, they don't even wear shoes. The UN wants us to help them, this and that, or whatever. It's going to be a sad day, man. We need to make sure that Americans never get in on that." But they want us to be part of this wicked system. How you doing, user 558? Thanks for being part of the community, old lady fun. Appreciate you. Right? These are all things that are there for us that we know. Right? And Reagan continued what? Nixon didn't like those hippies and those black people that were trying to get married and be together. Y'all remember that? Those damn hippies. Yes, that's what he said. Those damn hippies. You remember that? And everybody always makes fun of that. Because he said that. And he didn't like hippies, not only because they smoked weed, right? But the smoking weed was part of a corporation thing back in the 20s and 30s. Corporations didn't want people buying things made out of hemp and having weed and things like that. And the best weed, because the best weed and hemp wasn't made here. So hey, if they got hemp instead of our paper, they got paper made out of hemp instead of paper made out of trees, we're gonna be in trouble. COINTELPRO, yeah, we can talk about that too. I don't know if I'm gonna have time to slip that in. So much stuff as you guys can see, right? But you have all these different things, right? So then Nixon is trying to go against them. Then Nixon also doesn't like the fact that these hippies, white people, which is the same thing that's going on, the social construct, white and black, right, show up, that the hippies and the black people are not only hanging with each other, not only are they smoking with each other, not only are they playing the same music and stuff together now, like even AWB coming out and singing, play that funky music, white boy, and stuff like that. And you looking at Sly, and the Family Stone and all these different things, and you're looking at all these different groups, and you're like, wait a minute, these people coming together. Then they're having babies together now. That's a wait a minute. They're becoming a people. They're focusing on the same thing. They say, oh no, we can't have that happen. So then all of a sudden, weed is got to be extremely fought against because black people and white people, they're actually coming together. Like this, that we see our once again, your pain is their pleasure. Your pain is their product. Your trauma is what funds this country. Thank you for being part of the community, Fur Bear. Your trauma is what has this country making money. When they have somebody run against somebody, all they do is do stuff that's traumatic. Nixon did something, he left on something traumatic. Ford came in, he did something traumatic. So we need to replace Ford. So Ford finished doing something traumatic. We need to make sure that Carter comes in because Carter, he's an outsider. Same terms they use today. Carter's an outsider. He's just a Georgian good old boy who's a farmer. He ain't had nothing to do with the system. And Carter does all this wild stuff. Then all of a sudden, oh, we need somebody to replace him. We need to make America great again. That's what Ronald Reagan ran on. Make America great again. He ran on what? Make America great again. So his goal was to do what? Come in and what? Make America great again. And then don't forget, I'm gonna mention these people. We got to come back to them. But then Reagan finishes up. Then they put Bush in there because man, we can't have Reagan in there. Let's just put Bush in there. He'll continue the same thing. Bush is going to write stuff to make sure GMOs and other things to make sure that these people that are getting locked up because we said that they are drug addicts and stuff are there. Then we're gonna put Bill Clinton in, and he's gonna say that we're super predators and stuff, and he's gonna kill us off. But we'll say he's the first black president of the United States because he can play a saxophone terribly. And then we're gonna say that, and I'll always say terribly because if you're a musician, you know that he can't play. All right, you ain't gonna tell me Bill Clinton can play a saxophone, but he's black because he cheats, he smokes weed, he locks black people up, and he plays a saxophone. All right, then we're gonna say, oh well, Bush, see, Clinton was terrible, traumatic. So what do? We focus off that trauma. We say we need the opposite again. We'll go back to Bush because Bush was there when we got Reagan, and Reagan made America great again, and Reagan took us back to Nixon, and Nixon took us back to Eisenhower and all these different things or whatever. And then we'll bring in behind them, oh, we're bringing Obama because we need something different than Bush. So we need something completely different, even though Bush is going to do more things on the Republican side and the LGBTQ plus side than he ever does on the Democratic side or the black side of things. But then we're going to keep on moving. Well, things are so bad because you had a black president, and he was a president for 8 years, even though Eisenhower was a black president, and Lincoln was a black president, and George Washington was married to a brunette, which means that she was a black woman, or she was a woman that could pass for black, but you could tell in her hair, brunette hair, you could tell in her hair what she was. Go look up what a brunette was defined as in the 1800s, right? You'll discover what a brunette really is, and then all of a sudden you'll find that and then you'll do what? And but you'll say he's the first black president. He was in there too long. So what do? We need something different. Make America great again. Go back to Ronald Reagan, who was in California as a governor and became popular in America because he killed off a bunch of Black Panthers, and he was so great and swift in his execution of Black Panthers that they said no, he got to be the president. And then people will say, we put Trump in there, he caused too much trauma, so what do? Now you bring out Biden. And Biden didn't even provide you anything. All he is attached to Obama, but he's attached to something, but now he doesn't even have any of his right mind. But y'all gonna keep, it's the trauma that they feed off of. Your votes are based off of trauma. Your votes are not based off of what's righteous. Your votes are not based off of what's evil or the lesser two evils. They use trauma against you. You go there to vote hoping that you feel less trauma the next time. Why not separate from a system that just said we'll give you different types of trauma and get you to vote different types of ways? You said Hillary Clinton black because, oh yeah, because she had hot sauce in her pocketbook. That was one of the most embarrassing things I ever saw. And I was so mad that nobody called her out on it when she did that. She tried to be a black woman first. And you know what the problem, real problem with that is? There had to be a black sister that was on payroll. I'm gonna get to that when we get to the Clintons, but that there had to be a sister that was on black payroll. Oh, not black payroll, excuse me, on American payroll. There had to be a sister who was on American payroll to make sure that they said, hey, you know, if you want black people to vote for you, a lot of women they like to put a lot of stuff in their purses. Hold on one second, y'all. Salami. Qu'est-ce qu'il y a? Qu'est-ce que tu fais? For what? Where are you putting it? You gonna be right there? Okay. Hold on. Attends, question. I'm sorry. Give me a second. I'm sitting right here. Okay. My son is listening in. He wanted to sit down. So, and all these different things that are going on, right? You gotta realize those things are going on. Who are they working for? Once again, yeah, all these presidents are full of it, and all these presidents they set precedent. Yep, Biden told you if you don't vote for him, you ain't black. And people ran out to vote for him. That was their way of saying amen. That was their way of saying ashe. That's what they did. That was, I think I was speaking French. Yeah, I was speaking French. Yeah, we speak a few different things. I'm not fluent in a lot of different things, but I speak enough of a lot of different things. I'm trying to become fluent in multiple things. Avda or ancient Hebrew, French, Spanish. I don't do Spanish anywhere close to what I used to. When I had a 9 to 5, I spoke a lot of Spanish. Now I don't really speak anymore. I don't get practice on a lot of this. My wife is actually fluent in French. She was an exchange student, so she lived over in over in Switzerland, um, for a little bit, and she traveled to different countries and stuff. So she actually can break down a lot of languages, even if she can't speak them. But yeah. But anyways, let me get back to the main thing we're talking about today. So, um,
I know what Nani God means.
what?
I know what Nani God means.
What?
What is it?
Are you talking about when I say what is it? You talking about in what language you talking about?
Chinese.
Oh, okay. Possibly. I'd have to look it up. I don't know. Qu'est-ce que tu fais? Is or like even kusubiri or something like that, Kiswahili, which is really telling you more so to calm down. But anyway, so let's get back to this. Let's make sure that we finish off strong. Let's make sure we finish off strong. We came all this way. We're gonna finish off strong. So, so Reagan, we get to Reagan, who runs on "Make America Great Again," and all the stuff that I told you. Did any of the presidents do anything great? Of course not, right? Of course they did. But they tell us what "Make America Great Again." America was not great, at least not this modern America, right? Oh yeah, Congress wore the African clothes and all those things. But his whole thing is what? Make America great again. Thank you, Krypton. Appreciate it. So make America great again. But here's some stuff on Reagan that maybe you guys know. You know some of this. Some of this I know you probably don't. Do you know that Ronald Reagan is the first president to be condemned by the International Court of Justice? You probably didn't know that. You probably know that Reagan was impeached, or if they don't want to call it impeached, was pretty close to being impeached If you're in the 80s, if you're an 80s baby, even you probably remember at least seeing Reagan on television trying to explain his way out of what he got caught in with the Iran Contra stuff and with the Grenada stuff. Yeah, or like what Trump was like Reagan. But yeah, but same thing, right? History repeating itself. But Reagan was the first president to be condemned by the International Court of Justice. That means in all the stuff that these presidents we were talking about before, they did all these different things. Did all this stuff, including the prison industry, all this stuff, yeah. Did all those things going on, and yet those presidents, not one of them was it so bad that they said, okay, look, we can't turn the other way no more. Like we gotta, we gotta say that you breaking international law. Which, by the way, when they did that, it was unlawful use of force, or also known as international terrorism. Now, remember, I told you that what happened with Cuba, people don't want to admit it, but what got Cuba to the position they were in was because Cuba was experiencing international terrorism, and the United States of America was a reason why they were experiencing it. And when they reached out to the United States for what we would call reparations, the United States said, we'd rather have your enemy win than you. And if you're on YouTube, if you become a YouTube member, if you watch this later on, by the way, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. We appreciate it. If you're finding some great stuff on here on TikTok, feel free to go ahead and become part of the family. I know they say that you got to, what do they call it? You become a follower. I don't like to call you guys followers. You guys are family. So if you want to become part of the family, if you want to become part of what we're trying to do, not just even in learning, which we do learning every day, but if you want to help us with some stuff we're actually doing around the world, feel free to help us out. Thanks for being part of the community, Charlie. All right, and thank you for your likes, your shares, your subscriptions. If you want to hit the notification tab, if you're on YouTube, all those great things. So here we have what? We have Reagan, who was the first president to be condemned by the International Court of Justice, which is basically say they said it was because of unlawful use of force, which is also defined as international terrorism. Why is it that they talk about terrorists with all these other people, right? But they don't mention. We talk about how they don't mention white people. You know, the social construct white people. They don't mention them as terrorists. Why do we not ever talk about the fact that they don't mention these presidents as international terrorists? But once again, reach out to us. Look on the website. Look on the main page where it says website. Click on that. That's our link tree, and get in touch with us. You know, let's start chopping away. We're going to be traveling across the country pretty soon, so you know you can do it that way too. Right? But what? But so he's the first president out of all these presidents. He was so bad that even in all these other presidents that did nothing but use unlawful use of force, they were like, "Yo, you using international terrorism." Think about that. Napalm usage. Who was that again? That wasn't Nixon? That was that JFK? Yeah, JFK was the one that authorized napalm to be fired upon people's crops so that they couldn't eat. Didn't even use it on the people. He said, we're going to use it on your crops. We're going to let you slowly die. Stuff like that was being done by all these presidents. But what Reagan did was so heinous that they were like, yo, we, we, we can't even act like you ain't doing something. Like we can like smooth over the other stuff, but we can't even smooth over what you're doing. The International Court of Justice had to say you guys are using unlawful use of force. In other words, you were international terrorists. And they used it, and they specifically said it in all the places you would think about, because you could talk about Grenada, you could talk about the Iran Contra thing, right? But they said you could talk about what he did domestically against black people when he made sure that he told them or told them basically to take cocaine, make it into crack cocaine, or at least he gave the order to mess with only black people, and then they came up with taking cocaine and making it crack cocaine, and involved George Bush in it too. George Bush almost went down too. George Bush would have went down before Ronald Reagan would have, but they both got to escape because Oliver North came in with his secretary, and they went ahead. His secretary shredded all the information so that they couldn't use it against him, and Oliver North took the hit. That's why Oliver North got to work on Fox News all those years. He got paid really well because he took the hit, so he was taken care of for life, right? Well, the deals with Nicaragua, right? That's the place. A lot of people don't even think about what happened with Nicaragua. Don't even mention it. Look at what happened with Nicaragua. That's what made them say, "Yo, you use unlawful use of force. You killing off folk. What is wrong with you?" And all these other presidents that did all this stuff in Vietnam and Indonesia and what we people want to call the Middle East and what they're doing in Africa still to this day, and all these different stuff and things that are going on in Ireland and things that are going on, you know, with the Welsh and with with the Scottish still to this day, and all these different things that are going on, all these different people that are still dealing with things and dealing with genocide and things like that. People, things that are going on in Mexico, things that are going on the border, things that are going on, in places like Skid Row, right here. We know certain places, things that are going on with houses in Georgia where people are getting rained on because they don't have roofs and people whole places in Washington and Baltimore that don't have anybody living in them, people living in squalor and things of that nature, but you go right down the street 2 blocks and everybody's rich and well off. Like things that are happening in Chicago where they'll say you get shot on the south side or whatever, but hopefully not too many people come up to the bean so that we can go ahead and meet up there, and maybe you'll get shot up there, maybe you won't, but at least we can act like everything's fine. Like all these different things that are still happening with Haiti and all these things that are still happening today, all these things that are happening, the international the International Court of Justice said, yo, what you doing in Nicaragua, that's messed up. You know what I'm saying? They said, yo, what y'all doing is, Reagan was that heinous. And all the things we can talk about that America has done, the CIA has done, the FBI has done, they said, yo, Reagan, that right there, go study what happened in Nicaragua. They said, yo, that right there, that's heinous. Right? We can continue to talk. We talked about it yesterday, so I won't go into deep detail. But of course, the Iran-Contra thing. Of course, the fact that once again, we don't talk about that Iran actually was broken down by Eisenhower first, which means that America is responsible for Iran getting to the place. Iran then says, okay, we're gonna get revenge. We're gonna get these people, and we're gonna take them as hostages. Now all of a sudden, America's saying they're against Iran, but then they start, feeding weapons and stuff, and stuff. I'm sorry, buying stuff and buying weapons and stuff and giving the money, and then they go ahead and send Jesse Jackson and try to lie to us and make us think that Jesse Jackson was the person that went over to Iran, and that it was Muhammad Ali who like talked about Iran and stuff, and they talked these people out when the reality is that they were paying Iran, doing business deals or whatever, and then that's how they got the stuff to happen. Exactly, they distract you with tragedy. They distract you with trauma. How you doing, Lord? They give you these things, and then they say, and then they do the same stuff they've been doing to you. Right. Let's not talk about what they did in Grenada, where Grenada was setting up hospitals and setting up schools for the first time, and then when they killed them off because the people that were over there, they were against them. The Contra that they supported. Here's the deal: people don't even know this. Do you know that Congress, when Reagan was running on Make America Great Again, do you know that Congress knew that Reagan was going to try to go into Grenada, and they knew for sure he was going to mess and try to support the Contras because he had already came out and said that the Contras were great people, even though they were not even in this democracy. So they made up laws before he got in there. That's why he got impeached about that, or they tried to impeach him. Some people would say, but that's why he got questioned and everything about it because they had specifically made laws right before he came in because they knew he was going to try and make sure that he did what he did for the Contras, and he still did it anyways. And then basically they knew he did it, but they couldn't prove on paper he did it, and other people took the fall. So he got off. He finished his presidency, and then they put Bush in office. Okay, let's keep on going. Who's up next? The first Bush. The first Bush is up. What's the first Bush do? Besides making sure that he signs up for GMO stuff, right? We don't talk about that, but that's something that came out of the. You got to think the Reagan administration and Bush administration is one administration. So the Reagan administration out here giving you GMOs, right? Bush is the one who signs the paperwork, though. He also invades Panama. Now, depending on who you listen to, because the United States of America made sure that the UN and nobody else ever actually checked to see how many of what the claims were and see if they were valid. But there are people that lived in Panama who will tell you that they probably killed about 3,000 people initially when they came over there, right? Caused trauma. Then they kidnapped who we call Noriega or Noriega, but Noriega. They kidnapped Noriega and brought him back. Was it they put him in New York and put him on trial, something like that, or was it in Florida? I can't remember. Maybe it might have been Florida. But they brought him to the United States. They put him on trial. Now, why did they put him on trial? Why did they put him on trial? Yeah, we talked about all the stuff with Saddam Hussein and everything yesterday, right? But why did they put him on trial? Why did they put Noriega on trial? It was Florida, okay. They put well, he knew too much, but also they put Noriega on trial really because he was a disobedient thug, so to speak. He was a disobedient worker. He was somebody who got, because everything he ever did was bankrolled by the CIA. Maybe you knew that, maybe you didn't. Your tax money funded with everything Noriega ever did. There's not one thing that Noriega did that the U.S. didn't give him money to do. But hey, how you gonna say Noriega's bad or you're against bad things? And it's out there that the dude who's doing the bad things is on your payroll, which means that you're telling him the bad things to do, or you're okay with it because he's gonna basically put your regime, what you want, in place. Goes back to the drugs, feed stuff. Yeah, of course. And by the way, they didn't mind drugs that Noriega got his hands on, or people that the Noriega knew to get drugs from, or whatever the case might be. They didn't mind those things coming into the United States of America, did they? Because they didn't mind drugs coming into your neighborhood. You said he's in French jail now? Okay, I wasn't aware of that. But that's why they put Noriega on trial. He was on their payroll. You can't have somebody on their payroll running around and being disobedient because, hey, if he's being disobedient, he might mess around and tell everybody the truth. Now the truth is out, though, but nobody cares. But this was in the regime, Make America Great Again. Remember, you can't separate Bush from Reagan and Reagan from Bush. It's the same regime. They keep saying to people this country is broke. But not only that, in all honesty, the country never really had money in the first place, not for a long time. Money is not what makes you rich or broke anyways. It's what money buys you. Okay, you a extradited him to France, okay? So so watch this. So they kidnapped him because he was a disobedient thug for them. He was a hired thug, started doing his own thing. They said we got to get him out off the streets. Also, too, what about against the war? The war against Iraq. Now, we talked about that yesterday. We talked about the fact that America turned a blind eye to when Iraq was killing off Kurds and when they were killing off their own people and when Saddam Hussein had taken over from his own father figure and stuff like that. Nobody cared. There's being part of the community, Ed Nardi. Nobody cared. Nobody said anything. America was well aware of all those things and they turned a blind eye, right? They turned a blind eye. It wasn't until they had the right to come into Iraq because they basically got to say, well, we're looking for Osama bin Laden, anybody that has weapons of mass destruction, even though technically, even though you can believe or not believe, whichever, that it was a whole group of people that knocked down two buildings to fall straight down or whatever, then knocked down a Pentagon, you know, where there was no sign of any airplane that ever came in. Like we have no sign of any airplane entrance at all. Or you could believe that there was a plane that fell in the middle of Pennsylvania, which there are no pictures to be able to show you that there was a plane, and there's no plane parts. There's never anything, right? But we can go past that because some of you might say, oh, he's being a conspiracy theorist. So regardless of that, right, maybe you say I'm a conspiracy theorist. So let me just stay on track for some of you because some of you might look at what I'm saying as something that's reckless. However, we keep it on track. The war against Iraq, which basically was 100 days. Remember, I'm sorry, well, I won't bring Osama bin Laden up even though we could as far as Bush because Bush basically grew up friendly with Osama bin Laden, and Osama bin Laden was their friend. What happens with Iraq that was tied to Osama? Tied to Osama. We talked about that yesterday though, so we'll leave that part alone. But basically, when you get to the war of Kuwait, and America tries to basically take the contract that Osama had to protect Kuwait and therefore get some oil money, which is why Osama basically, that was the final straw. That's when we started fighting back and forth real bad. When you look at Osama, I'm sorry, when you look at Saddam, Saddam, everybody was cool with him, even though he had tried to kill the first George Bush. Everybody still was rolling with him. It wasn't up until they could finally say everybody's got weapons of mass destruction, even though they didn't, right? That's when they went ahead and killed everybody off. He said, if you is the, we all is that have been taught the truth. I call you a conspiracy theorist as well. Yeah. Conspiracy theory was created by the CIA, of course. Yeah, I'm with you. But I'm just saying some people will call you conspiracy theorists because they just don't know what you're talking about. And they've been taught some different things. How you doing, Shalom Big Ak? How you doing? So he went into there, but here's the deal. Once again, war crimes. Why was it a war crime for the United States of America to go into Iraq. That's not what the war crime is. You can go into war against anybody and not be a war crime. The war crime was what? Genocide. Yeah, we talked about the box party yesterday. Yep. But the war crime was genocide. And by the way, even when we talk about Iran, let's not forget, I forget the guy's name, was the Ayatollah of Iran or something like that, or whatever his position was. But the guy who was the main Muslim influence, he was the one that was saying, get ready to go against Iraq and take over. And he was calling for the Shiites to go up against Saddam because Saddam was a Sunni and most of the people in power were Sunnis, right? So, but yeah, so it's not as clear cut, right? There's parts to everybody, right? We're just talking about these presidents mainly, but there's moving parts as always, right? It's never quite, what we think A plus B equals C. Usually B is a little different equation than what we might think it is to get us to C. So sometimes we got to be careful not to be too too much on one side, or else it starts becoming theoretical rather than factual, right? Thank you for the love, appreciate it. So, but watch this. So Bush, when he sent people into Iraq, the problem wasn't that he sent people into Iraq and that they basically, the first Bush, and that they basically, or not even to Iraq, excuse me, that they sent people into Kuwait and basically finished everything off in 100 hours. So 4 days and 4 hours, the war was over. That wasn't even the problem. The problem that happened was that simultaneously, so at the same time they were doing that, they were bombing and poisoning and breaking down infrastructure in Iraq. That's a war crime because you're killing people off. So if you're poisoning a water source, right, and everybody in Iraq drinks the water, are you fighting against Iraqi soldiers or are you fighting against Iraqi children? See, there's a reason why people hate it. How you doing, Rita? There's a reason why people can't stand the United States of America. There's a reason why you go to a lot of different places and they go, man, y'all two-faced. Y'all talking about this group and that group and this person and that person. And they're like, y'all do tons of terrible things. Thanks for being part of the community. Appreciate it. Because while people are up here talking about how bad Saddam was, and he was bad, don't get it twisted. But we won't sit up there and say, yo, like, you talking about how he was poisoning people and doing stuff, but y'all poisoned innocent people who didn't fight at all, who weren't involved in the fight, who couldn't protect themselves. Y'all did that. And then turned around and said that it was okay to do it because Saddam did the same thing that you did. That's why people can't stand the United States of America. It's two-faced. Right, then they turned around, Bush turned around right after that and put on sanctions on them on top of that. They ended up killing off thousands of Iraqi people, and yet, while it killed off thousands of Iraqi people, it actually supported Saddam Hussein's political values. So even though Saddam supposedly tried to kill the first Bush, George H.W. Bush, even though he tried to kill George H.W. Bush, George H.W. Bush was still like, yo, it's good for business to keep Saddam in power. Because remember, America could have kept on going. They could have said, okay, we done with Kuwait. We're going to come over. We're going to eradicate all this stuff, the regime of Saddam and all that, because he's such a terrible person. They never did. They left him in power while continuing to put sanctions on that killed his people, which meant that he was going to hold power, and a lot of people who were against him were going to die. And so now that puts him in a position to say, hey, look, they're not coming after me because they realize my righteousness. They realize who I am. And see, they're killing you off at the same time. They set that thing up. That was a setup. But people talking about America was the people who you need to think about. I know we're a little bit over time. We're going to just take a little bit more and be done because we're almost finished with these presidents. We started at Eisenhower today. We're going to finish up, okay? Right, so I might have to speed it up a little bit and omit a few things, but I want to make sure we get this together because I want you to come out of this system that makes you think that a president is this great thing or this great person. He said mission government poison our plant water, yeah. Right? If they do it foreign wise, once again, our mindset, we think that if they do it foreign to foreign folk, they wouldn't do it to domestic folk. That's not how that works at all. If they'll do it to somebody who's away, they'll do it to you. Because you're not in the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. You must comprehend. They're not thinking about you just because you black, white, poor, rich, blah, blah. They think about you as like Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett. I'll give credit where credit's due. Warren Buffett doesn't mind teaching anybody what they want to know, But Warren Buffett ain't looking at you and I as if we the same as him. Like he looks at you as a human being, but in his mind, like he deals with people, he deals with things like when Warren Buffett, like when we go to Detroit, we're gonna try and use some of the structures that are around to show you how to look beyond what you see. When he comes to Detroit, he's looking to buy a skyscraper for 20 for like or for like $500,000. Now, how you buy a skyscraper for $500,000? Because the city is dead, and so when the city is dead, vultures come. So he's a vulture. He doesn't mind teaching you how to be like a vulture, but he's a vulture. See, we had this thing messed up in our head where we're thinking, oh, it's only because black. No, they talk about the black thing to keep you separated. On the top, they know that they don't care about black, white, or whatever. Like, if you poor, you poor. Right? But down here, they make sure that they teach you, hey, be against each other because you're black and you're white. It ain't nothing that's changed. This ain't nothing new. But anyway, so they gave the sanctions. They left Saddam in place. Then you got Clinton. Let me go ahead and get through these last, what is it, five, four or five, whatever it is, presidents. So you got Clinton. Clinton comes through, and Clinton did a bunch of stuff. Clinton came through, and he continued the same sanctions that Bush did. So he was killing off those Iraqi people. Had no problem with it, but was keeping Saddam in power. All right. Clinton came through, and here's something we talk about all the time. Now, we talk about how Clinton ignored that war that was happening in the Congo and stuff that was going on. They could have stopped it. And they even sent special units in. But the special units just kept the war going, right? But what did Clinton do as well? Clinton came, and he actually, a lot of people don't think about what he did to the Saddam. The Saddam. What did he do to Saddam? Hmm. Part of the former Kush Empire. What did he do to us? Because I'm part Cushitic, so this hits me as well. What did he do to us? He sent 2 cruise missiles into the Sudan. When he sent 2 cruise missiles into the Sudan, what did he do? One cruise missile by itself killed tens of thousands. Just one. And they say that they sent it, and we know this, by the way, because we got this not just from American sources, not just from Sudanese sources. We also have this on the word of a German ambassador who was there, who said that he saw tens of thousands of people dead with his own eyes, having to try and figure out how to escape what was going on because of this cruise missile. That was just one cruise missile. He sent 2, and it was sent at a pharmaceutical place. It was not sent at a place for war. It was sent at a place where they were trying to make medicine, y'all. Exactly. You already knew where I was going. He went to try and kill a pharmaceutical place, a pharmaceutical plant. They were making medicine for Sudanese people. Sudanese people, Cushitic people, the people that Kemet got their stuff from, right? Trying to heal themselves and make sure that they're doing well. And what did they do? They sent 2 cruise missiles, not 1, 2. One of them killed tens of thousands. So I don't even know. We don't even know really what the second one did. Killed 2 of them. I mean, sent two cruise missiles. Where we know this isn't something I'm making up. This is, if you were to look this up, this is facts. We know for a fact that we had the intelligence, we had the intel that told us that they were firing. Anybody in the military, when you get ready to go somewhere else, anybody who's been in the military before, you know, when you get ready to go overseas and you got to fight, you have intel. You know what it looks like. You know what it is. You know who lives where. You're going off what they tell you, right? Before they shot it, they had intel. They knew specifically that they were shooting at a place for medicine, and they killed tens of thousands of people with just one. Who knows how many were killed with the other? So possibly hundreds of thousands of people. Possibly, we don't know, but possibly hundreds of thousands of people, right? When I was in the Navy, even though I was on the ship sometime, but also I actually went, on land. I actually went on land and fought. I actually, provided security for bases and things like that as well. So I actually did do some different things and just be on the ship. And when you go over, they're going to tell you, this is what it looks like. This is the enemy. Children in this area do this. If you go over here, this is okay. If you go over here, hey, make sure blah, blah, blah. Be prepared to make sure that they make sure that you're in the mindset. If you get captured, they go through all the stuff with you again. They gave the intel. They tell you what's going to be there. Well, they knew when they fired over there. They knew that they were hitting 2 places where they were trying to grow their own medicine. That's a war crime. But people still argue for Clinton when his wife was running. Clinton also made sure that he ruled past UN resolutions as, and I quote here, as being obsolete and anachronistic. If you don't know what that means, basically saying that it was ancient and it couldn't be used anymore, right? So he broke away from international law. Second person, Reagan, we just said was the first person to get called out on it by the International Court of Justice. Now here's Clinton saying, I don't care about international law because my superiors tell me that that law is obsolete and anachronistic. So that means that the UN said, hey, why are you doing what you're doing in Africa? Why are you doing what you're doing in Haiti? We'll get to that in a second. I know people are ready to go into that one. I think that's our next point. So let me go ahead and start talking about that. Why are you doing what you're doing in Haiti? Hey man, the laws that y'all got, they're obsolete and they're anachronistic. We didn't say they're obsolete and anachronistic. We said they are. Right? Clinton flexed on them. Somebody be like, no, that's not how we, why are you doing that? He said, what you gonna do about it? Right? That's what Clinton basically did. Like, yo, what you gonna do about it? And the world said, nothing. Right? That's what happened. Clinton flexed on him. He said, man, you know what? I would listen to y'all, but you know what? Like, that stuff old. Like people do now, That's old. Why you bringing up old stuff? Why you bringing up stuff that happened in the 50s and the 60s, Like, those people don't even exist anymore, right? But Clinton had more boldness. He had no more bass in his voice. He was like, no, that's old. And they said, it's not old. We dealing with that now. We dealing with you. You doing it. He said, what y'all gonna do? Everybody's like, nothing. That's how that happened. That's how that happened, right? He dealt with Haiti. This is what he did. He was a lawyer, right? So he comprehended how things work. He had powerful friends in Arkansas. His friends in Arkansas are growing food or growing rice. They ain't really, getting rid of their rice or whatever. But his friends, including himself, they need to be able to get this rice out. So what did they do? He goes to Haiti. Right, the CIA has already been messing with Haiti. We forget Haiti got her independence, and France was able to come back and force them to pay reparations. They paid off the reparations. France left them alone to basically die and rot, but they were doing all right. They were going to kind of get on their feet. But then the CIA came in and took over, and they put like Papa Doc and Baby Doc in order. And now we're trying to get ourselves in order, but they killed the Haitian president from the jump again when all the stuff happened with the vaccinations. Right? So dealing with some of the same stuff. And we've been dealing with some of the same things. But here comes Clinton, and Clinton's got friends. And Clinton's friends, they need to get rid of this rice. They can get rid of stuff that they're growing. So what does he do? He goes over to Haiti, and he basically forces the Haitian people. He puts sanctions on and stuff, and he forces the Haitian people through Papa Doc, really, right? But basically gets these people in a place. Is it Papa Doc or Baby Doc at this point? I think it's Papa Doc. And he basically gets his help, sell out to his own people, and he gets his help basically to make it illegal or impossible almost to be able to grow excuse me, to be able to grow rice, which means you basically got to make it impossible to grow food. So they can't eat their own rice anymore. Then he brings rice over and says you got to buy this rice. They still dealing with that today. They hate Clinton over there. They hate either Clinton. They hate the daughter. They don't even right. The daughter ain't even been in office. They hate her too, right? They can't stand them. Not just do they hate them, they're angry with them. Remember, those are two different words. Hate is to detest. So anything that you bring over there, they detest the Clintons, but they hate. But they're angry with the Clintons too. It was Papa Doc, okay. So Papa Doc helps to make sure that that happens. He set it up. They killed people if they tried to grow rice, grow food. That's why Haitians now eat mud pies. And you think that a mud pie, you use some mud pie with the cream in the center and all that stuff. You got it off or the oatmeal cookie or whatever. You got it you got it from the Dollar Tree nowadays, or you go to the store get it, or you got it off the ice cream truck, and you got the frozen ones. Y'all love that, right? No, they actually eat mud pies in Haiti. They actually have people that go out because at least there's some kind of nutrients in it. They don't have food that's really growing. They'll go to the beaches. They'll go to the rivers sometimes, and they got mothers out there who will sit up there and find ways to be able to cook up mud, and then they eat it so they can at least have some kind of sustenance. So how would you feel against someone who's holding you down? Yeah, right. So these people can't stand them. right? Clinton did that. Clinton made sure that he called us super predators. Did he not? Y'all remember that? Anybody old enough to remember that you were a super predator? You weren't a black person. You weren't an American. People keep saying, "Oh no, you're an American." No, you weren't. I remember when you said that I was a super predator. Don't tell me I'm supposed to be an African American or some stuff that you made up in the late 1970s or in 1980s. Don't tell me I'm supposed to be that. I remember you told me I was a super predator. I remember Hillary said I was a super predator. I remember Bill said I was a super predator. I remember you got some of my people to be able to go out and start saying, yeah, we need to take care of these super predators. I remember that you said I was a super predator because of three strikes that I'm out, even though you had Reagan be the one to make sure that he put the stuff that was never my community in there to make us drug addicts in the first place, and said that if somebody had possession, they had to serve life. That means bare minimum 25 years. Some of my people still serving life sentences. Matter of fact, if you look up Lil Boosie, forget my language. He's known as forget my language. I apologize up front. He's known as Boosie Badass, I believe, right? Lil Boosie out there. Lil Boosie is actually dealing with being on parole now. He's on parole because his paperwork basically says this is his third time dealing with um, marijuana charges. He's still dealing with three strikes and you're out. Except Biden said that too, of course, and Reagan said it, and Trump said it. You know, and the list goes on, right? Like all of them said, but they called you super predator. Richard Nixon was calling you a super predator, but he wasn't. They didn't have that word yet. They were just saying blacks and hippies, right? But these people are up there. That's what they're going through. These people that you see in prison, they're dealing with that stuff that came from them. And they only stopped doing that because now white people are going through the opioid epidemic, and they said, "Oh wow, opium, people can actually have problem with drug addiction. Oh, okay, you know, we need to make sure that we get rid of this three strikes and you're out because we don't want white people to go to jail. I mean, this is just something that human beings go through. Everybody can go through addiction. That's not what they said for us, though. I remember. So stop telling me that I'm an American. Stop telling me that we're all Americans because you told me I was a super predator. I remember. I'm old enough. I remember you said that when my people tried to get with white people, you said that these blacks and hippies, they're just marijuana addicts. I remember, don't try to tell me I'm something different now. I remember that, hey, see, watch this. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he died in 1968, right? Do you know that there was a census done in 1967, year before he died, and there was another census that happened in 1968 when he died? Right before he died, the census said that he was a communist and he was asking for too much too soon, right? In 1968, the census said that he deserved to die because he was asking for too much too soon. I remember watching people on the news, people that still are alive today, who are on the news saying, hey, you know what, you guys shouldn't be angry. Who's going to be the black person to make sure that they stop all this stuff as far as the rioting and the looting and all those different things that are happening today? I remember that happening, but I remember nobody saying the same thing when Alabama won a championship or when the Cleveland Cavaliers won a championship or whatever your team of choice won a championship, and then you had all these white people flipping over cars and literally, you guys know I ain't lying about this now because there's video evidence. People literally eating the fecal matter of horses in celebration of a team winning a championship, burning down neighborhoods. People afraid to go outside, saying, "Hey, when our team wins tonight, make sure that your children don't come out, or else they might get killed." Because these are town destroyers. I'm not even saying figuratively. I'm saying literally. There was somebody out there eating horse. You know what? But when my people were disgusted, and this time didn't have Martin Luther. See, Martin Luther King Jr. was there before, and he stopped. Remember, 1963, the March on Washington, it was not supposed to be peaceful. We were supposed to go there and wreck shop. And Kennedy was like, yo, you know we're going to end up killing a bunch of y'all. You might as well help. And Martin was like, okay, I'll help. Even though he kind of probably shouldn't have, right? You killed off the man that stopped that from happening and then got mad when things got violent. I remember, not I recall. See, I had to be there to recall. Remember means I bring it back to my remembrance. In other words, remember means that something was dismembered. I was cut off from it. But now, right, I'm able to have it brought back to me in remembrance. I remember. I remember. I had great friends who had me tour around D.C. and had me tour around Baltimore who were of certain ages. One of them not even here anymore on this earth, right? At least not in this form that I'm in. And they showed me places that are still burned down to this day that they remembered being vibrant and told me what the stuff looked like. I've been there, done that. Chi-Town, Baltimore, D.C. I went to those places, and I remember that they burned them down because they were not Americans. They were tired of you telling them that they were something that they aren't. I remember listening to people just this year who had their families be killed by somebody that said that not only were we super predators, he called us replacers. He said that we needed to be killed because we were taking over white lands and that white babies needed to be born. Oh, NYC too. Yeah, matter of fact, I know from I moved from NYC when I was still in early elementary school, but I remember there were places that used to still be burned down from the King riots too. You're absolutely right. I actually lived over in Brooklyn when PS11, and not too far, I think around the corner from it, there was still a place that was messed up from the time of MLK, and they called him a communist, and they said he deserved death. That was in the census. That's why Jane Elliott, white woman who must be protected, Jane Elliott, right? Jane Elliott, amazing stuff that she said. I don't agree with everything, but guess what? Like credit where credit is due. She out here fighting way more than a lot of people are, and gets a lot more play than a lot of people do, and is out here willing to say that this is a mental health issue. This is evil. This stuff that we're doing or whatever, right? And the reason why she started speaking up on our behalf is because that she found she was going to go and do a thing with her children where they were going to build a teepee and talk about a native oath that you say to be able to cause peace throughout the land. And her sister called her, told her that MLK had got shot. And when she saw that he got, when she found out he was basically dead, right? Because he was still alive. They actually killed him after he was shot. He was on life support. They actually killed him when he was shot. If you don't know that, look it up. The lawyer of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. talks about it openly a lot. And also, um, he won. What was it in the state of oh wow, was it Alabama? I'm saying the wrong state, not Georgia. Got to be Alabama, right? Where he got shot. Where he get shot? Well, whatever state he got shot in, basically the family lost the the legal suit or whatever, what we call it. It's both legal, but basically they won the civil suit. It was in Tennessee. Okay, thank you. They won. Yeah, Tennessee. Okay, they won the civil suit against Tennessee. So they actually won when they sued the state of Tennessee, which means the state of Tennessee admitted that three men walked in the room, spit on him, muffled him, and basically, while he was shot in the head trying to recover, they don't know if he would have recovered or not, but they killed him before they had a chance to know. So his family actually won the civil lawsuit, right? But yeah, like you can find these things or whatever. You can find places, and they said, and so she found out about that. She said, you know what? From this point on, like I'm done. I'm speaking up against it, and she started speaking up against it. And they started threatening her family. She had to move, and she said, wow, I thought we were all supposed to be these good Christian white folk. That's why she's not a Christian no more. Because she was like, I thought we were Christian white folk, and you trying to kill my family because I said that a reverend that got shot in the head was wrong. You see what I'm saying? So don't tell me we all Americans. I remember the same Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. that you guys did not officially across the United States of America celebrate until 1992. A lot of us, see, in 1992, I would have been turning 10 years old. And I used to, like everybody else, think, oh yeah, we always celebrated Martin Luther King Jr. birthday. No, we didn't. It wasn't until 1992. But see, when you listen to stuff or you have somebody trying to tell you some foolishness, you'll find a way for cognitive dissonance to creep in. I was around. I was alive at the time that they weren't doing it, right? It wasn't until 1992 that finally all the states said, okay, we'll go ahead and we'll say that we'll deal with his born day, his birthday. So I remember it wasn't that long ago that you said that I was not an American, right? And if I say that America should get better, you say I'm not an American. So I'll just go ahead and stay not an American. If you want to talk about a real American, the original American, then I be that copper colored person, indigenous to the Americas. And by the way, this is really bright copper. When this copper loses some of the luster and the shine off of it eventually, you can see some of it already gone. When you look at it, it look like a certain color, don't it? That's what a copper colored person indigenous to America was. Yeah, Stevie Wonder talked about it in that Arizona. Yeah, the last one. Oh, you found it? She's in North Carolina? Okay, I didn't know that. I think I knew that actually. Right. Either way, that's what this country's about. That's what this nation is about. Hey, how you doing, Charisma? Thanks for being part of the community. So, so you got to recognize that. So I remember that Clinton did that, and Clinton still never apologized. Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, they were forced to. See, once again, corporations. People started catching on and being like, "Yo, you called a super predator." So they were like, "Oh, okay, yeah, we can't do the same thing." By the way, they do the same stuff through the Red Cross too, till this day. The Red Cross still over in Haiti. Red Cross, when they go a lot of places, they shut stuff down. Supposedly they're healing everybody, but they shut stuff down. So one of the reasons why they control the food is because the Red Cross is in it too. Clinton set up all over the place. Thank you for the love, brother Clinton. He said, "Don't forget Jesse Jackson was with MLK at the shooting. It was a setup." It might have been. I don't know if Jesse was in on the setup or not. In all honesty, right? That's something that we just kind of put there. We don't really have like evidence for that. But I guess if you say he ran for president right after, and he's the one that started telling us to call ourselves African Americans, you could say that. But I think there's ignorance. Like I don't think Jesse's. This is gonna sound bad for me to say about another human being, so y'all forgive me. I don't. I think and smart is not the word I would use, but I don't think Jesse's as intelligent as what we think he is. And I mean that as far as intel, information. I don't think he has the information that people think he does. Right? Just like when we talked about earlier, when MLK did the whole March on Washington thing, he knew it was kind of messed up because that wasn't really what black people who started the March on Washington wanted it to be. But he also was kind of like, I don't know how to stop this, and if I don't stop it, a lot of black people are gonna die. So he thought he was doing the righteous thing. I don't think that Jesse has as much intel, but he could. I'm not gonna say one way or the other. I don't know. I'm not. I'm not intimate enough with it, and I'm not aware of it. He could have been. He could not have been. He's a great rapper. He got rhymes. He got bars. He do got bars, for sure. He sounds like a great preacher. And even in that though, what is it? What's the pastor he's over? I forget the name of the place he's over. The last couple times I've seen it and been there, or whatever. Well, I never been there, been through there. It doesn't seem like it's a big congregation, but that don't mean nothing. Um, but I'm not sure what he does as far as pastoring and things like that. It's kind of. I look at Jesse like this too. In all honesty, what's the name of the comedian that passed away a little while ago? The fat guy. Forgive me for saying it, but that's what he called himself, fat white guy. Ralphie May, right? Ralphie May said, "I don't call him." He said he was talking about something. He said, "Oh yeah," and then Sharpton did blah blah, and then and then he paused because everybody was quiet, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I don't call him Reverend Al Sharpton." Like, he was like, "I never seen him preach." I was like, Now I know I've seen Reverend Al Sharpton preach, but you don't really see him preach that much, right? I guess technically maybe you could say he's preaching when he's speaking up. He's like, I ain't never seen him preach. He's like, you got to earn it. He's like, I don't call him Reverend because I ain't never seen him preach. I was like that's bars. I can't really say nothing. How you doing, Kevin? Thanks for being part of the community. He's a lot of living Panthers like Reverend Annie Chambers say he's intel. Yeah, I mean that could be true. There's a lot of Black Panthers that were intel. That's how they got Freddie and all that stuff. So, or Fred. I'm thinking Freddie Gray. I always do that. Fred Hampton and Freddie Gray, excuse me. But that's how they got Fred. But so when he said that, I was like, I probably heard that 5, 6 years ago, and when he said it, maybe 7 years ago now. Time flies. Wow, probably it's like 7, 8 years ago when I was still over in Northwest DC. Yeah, so probably like 7, 8 years ago. But he said it, and I was like, that's hard right there. I wasn't ready for that one, but I was like, yeah, I guess you're right. Like I can't remember. Now since then, I've seen him preach, right? I think once or twice, maybe twice. But I was like, yeah, up until then, I can't remember a sermon from him. And even like the stuff that he does, he on some James Brown stuff. And as much as I love James Brown saying "Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud," James Brown was as much on the right side of things as possible. Now I'm be honest, I'm left and right. That's why I'm not a Republican and Democrat. Because what's truth is truth, what's righteousness is righteousness, right? At the end of the day, though, like he was like James Brown, super Republican, and that's the reason why Al Sharpton even does his hair because of James Brown. If you don't know, Al Sharpton is James Brown's adopted son or godson. But basically, James Brown raised Al Sharpton. That's why Al Sharpton's hair looks like that. It's because he wanted to be like his daddy. If you didn't know that. But yeah, so Al Sharpton is very very interesting thing to do it or whatever. But yeah, so you got the Clintons. I'm sorry, you said James Edgar Hoover said it will never be a black leader again unless we choose them. Yeah, I mean, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. wasn't actually chosen by them either, so he fell through the cracks. Marcus Garvey wasn't chosen by them, but he was around at the same time as J. Edgar Hoover and kind of started before him, so I guess he doesn't count. Malcolm X wasn't chosen, or if you want to go Elijah Muhammad and Louis Farrakhan too. And it depends, I guess, on the level of leadership. Like I would say that you got to look at um, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. Uh, I like her books, but I don't know if I would consider Dr. Joy DeGroy to be a leader. Dr. Neely Fuller Jr. would tell you he's not a leader, but he tells you that he hears how code works. I think I look at Dr. Amos Wilson as a leader. I think Dr. Laia Africa was a leader. Dr. Sabi, I think is somebody nice to listen to, but don't live like him. But eat like him, but don't live like him. If you comprehend what I'm saying. But yeah, the goal is to make sure, just like Willie Lynch said, you pull apart the most ornery, the most vibrant, the most energetic, the most anti-enslavement person you can find. You pull them apart in front of everybody else, and you make sure that the other men are beaten almost to the point of death, but don't kill them because they still need the job out to you. And then you make sure the women and children watch it, so that the woman from that time on will be in an independent state of fear. That's what he said. So the independent black woman thing came from watching her men be killed, and then having to say like he can't protect me, and then him thinking that he's supposed to be in the back scared, which is why you got all these people that do all these bad things, heinous things, that be on the street, and then they run over their girlfriend's house while talking about how they don't submit. They run over their girlfriend and their mama's house to make sure that the cops can't come in there so that their girlfriend can go down for them. I've watched in my family. I watched family members where women have been willing to go down for their husbands and for their boyfriends and stuff, to make sure that they can protect them as much as they can. So, it's a lot of the same stuff, right? Clinton, to end though, let's go ahead and get past Clinton. Then he made sure that he also put what the same way that we talked about with Jimmy Carter when he got his Nobel Peace Prize. Then Clinton would make sure that U.S. taxes were used to continue to support Israeli peace settlements, which basically just means your taxes are used to make sure that Israel gets more land. Now, the same way they gave Jimmy Carter a Nobel Peace Prize for allowing Israel to have so much money that they could attack other countries with uh, American tools of force, instruments of force. That's the same way that um, I'm sorry. Oh yeah, that's the same way that basically Clinton was using money, your tax dollars, those of you who pay taxes and stuff, because you're still U.S. citizens and you haven't gotten to a place where you even know what a W8BEN is yet. So those of you who still have to pay taxes, and you should if you're not sovereign, if you don't have your paperwork together, you should, because you'll get messed up. Or even if you don't have your paperwork together, if you're still making sure that you're buying things that are tied into the system and dealing with benefits and privileges, school, health care, all those things, well, you got to pay for that. That's the way that works. But those of you who pay for that, you have to recognize that that's what he was using your money for. Right? Then we get after that. We'll just make these quick because we got to take our lead. Bush Bush was somebody, the second Bush, right? So this is not George H.W. Bush. This is George W. Bush. Yeah, same way they're doing in Ukraine. Yep, that's your money that they're using, right? As much as they say they don't have money for your oil, they got enough money to support stuff that has nothing to do with you, right? But now that you're dealing with that, so George W. Bush, W, right? What did George W. do? George W. continued the stuff in Indonesia, right? Had you guys worried about China. Told you while separating church and state, he started doing some No Child Left Behind, but you don't know is actually attached to the whole thing that was making sure the churches were getting money in their pocket. You're talking about Trump doing that, which a lot of people don't even know. Bush, the second Bush, started doing that. Second Bush also, now depends, once again, I think you have to figure out how much intel or how much control these people are under, right? Because Bush's vice president, Cheney, right, the former basketball player, Dick Cheney, probably has way more stuff that he did as far as leading stuff than Bush did, because Cheney worked for people and had more money tied into things than Bush did. So remember, even the reason why people, and I won't go through this whole long spiel because we could be here all day just talking about September 11th. Maybe we need to at some point because the old one got taken down off of YouTube, right? But um, here's the deal. Here's the deal with the. I'm trying to make this as fast as possible. The reason why people have issues with September 11th is this. If you look at it, it's not so much Bush, but it's actually Dick Cheney. And I told you, like a lot of these people, they're just puppets on a string, right? Dick Cheney is actually the person who was part of the company. Now I forgive me, I can't remember. Y'all can look it up for yourself, right? Because some people put it as a conspiracy theory. You can still read about it. However, I don't remember. Halliburton it might be. I feel like Halliburton's close. If it's not it, I think it is Halliburton. I don't know. If somebody has the ability to Google or something, you can check me on it, right? But Halliburton, yeah, maybe we should make that a Patreon thing just to be safe about it. But Halliburton is dealing with. It was Halliburton, okay. So Halliburton is dealing with. Hey, babe, thank you. It was Halliburton. Yeah. So Halliburton is dealing with a place where Cheney was part of the company. Cheney becomes the vice president or whatever, so he's not supposed to be over it. He sells his stock, but still has business interests and stuff with the people that are in there, right? All of a sudden, well, I don't even know if he sold his stock. He just basically couldn't be in the company anymore, right? He couldn't have a position, be on the board, whatever he was doing. So, but he's still making money off of it. People that he knows are making money off it, etc. Right? All of a sudden, out of nowhere, the day before, I need you to hear this. All these people that are involved in it, the day before, everything goes down, right? So September 10th, 2001. All of a sudden, there was a bunch of money that was there, and nobody would happen to it. And when I say a bunch of money, I'm talking about that can be somewhere close to being thought about like some people will go up to saying a trillion, $2 trillion, but we're talking about hundreds of billions, bare minimum. All of a sudden, it's gone. All these people that are part of Halliburton, nobody can attest to what happened. Nobody knows what's happening. All of them gone, right? And he's gonna get some of this money later, right? But all of this money just gone the day before, right? And then a bunch of other things tied to the United States. We can't track what happened to it either. Stuff for the Pentagon, we can't happen. September 11th happens, and once again, this is the thing that really messes with people, but they don't like it, but it's true. You have to ask yourself something, right? Because I've been to the site where everything happened, right? I wasn't there when it happened, but I've been to the site where everything happened. I was actually stationed in, I think, Virginia at the time, but not in the DMV. So, but I have family members who were there when it happened, worked for the Pentagon, um, live in D.C., etc., live in New York, who will tell you how they felt the tremors, how they saw an explosion, all types of stuff, right? And when you listen to everybody's story, here's the problem: when you go and you start putting this stuff together, you have to think to yourself that there were two extremely tall buildings. Now we know airplanes hit them for sure, right? But there's two extremely tall buildings. One building, both buildings are straight up. Two extremely tall buildings, both buildings straight up going. Both of them hit by airplanes. And you're telling me that the airplane caused not where it hit for the top half to come down, but for the whole building to come straight down. Not go down over, but straight down. Yep, collection of insurance and all that. So the problem that we have is that if that happened once, possibly, I'm not going to go deep into it. I'm just going to tell you why we got to look at this stuff is what it is, right? And get away from this wicked system that tried to tell you that was a real thing. Because if that happened once, okay. But the odds of that happening twice, where buildings that tall came straight down, and we know for a fact that nobody could park underneath the buildings for months, which means that you could have set up what was necessary. Because the only way that that really happens, even when you see it in movies or when you see it when they show everybody, when they invite everybody to do that, you got to make sure that you set up an explosion. So that's why people have an issue with it, right? When you put those things together, you got an issue, right? No plane found, in Pennsylvania for sure, and doubts as to whether there's a couple people, and it's legit. Like when I say a couple, there's a couple people that say that they remember seeing parts of planes in the Pentagon, right? So I know some people that were in the Pentagon at the time, things like that, but I haven't heard from them. There's a couple people though that say that they have testimonies that say that they found something. There's videos that are there when it happened. There's no plane that's been found. There has been a little bomb, probably about my size actually, about 6 feet, that they said that you can see go in there though, right? So something did happen. There was an explosion there. But anyways, we'll leave that alone. But yeah, so you have Bush doing that. Bush does the No Child Left Behind thing, and then leaves a bunch of children behind. Bush Bush basically says that he's doing all these things for separation of church and state, but then sits there and says like basically like we're gonna make sure we set this up for evangelists, evangelical Christians and things like that. Bush does a lot of different things like that. Bush says we're going to go into Afghanistan looking for Osama bin Laden. They actually found him in a cave somewhere else. I know this from stuff I can't even say all the stuff that I know, but I know, and it's in books too, that actually will supplement some of the details I'm going to have to leave out. But I know for a fact that they called in the Bush in the White House and said that we're pretty sure that we're at a cave where Osama bin Laden's in. Are we allowed to engage? They were told 2 times no. So if it was about getting Osama bin Laden, why didn't we get him? Right? This is all when Bush is in office. We also know, we also know that Iraq didn't have. Now, when we say weapons of mass destruction, let's be honest. What we said we were going into Iraq for was supposed to be nuclear weapons. Let's stop the nonsense. When they said weapons of mass destruction, it's supposed to be they got nuclear weapons. They can kill us. They can kill other people. They can wipe people off the map. Did Iraq have MAC gas, the odorless gas, the stuff they used against the Kurds? Did they have mustard gas? Yes. Did they have stuff that America knew they were using already? See, that's the problem. See, once again, problematic. America knew. America had no problem with them using odorless gas that even Hitler himself wouldn't use. They had no problem with him using it against people that they didn't care about in Iraq, right? They themselves, we talked about that earlier. They themselves, when they fought against Iraq, they had no problem. His daddy Bush had no problem making sure that they were going ahead and attacking infrastructure, which meant that they were poisoning people and killing people and taking lights away and electricity and making sure people couldn't have food. They were doing all those things already. The Americans did that and still allowed Saddam Hussein to stay in power. So this whole thing that they had to come in there because he had weapons of mass destruction, he never had nuclear weapons. And matter of fact, that's why Colin Powell was there during the first president or the first half of the presidency, but he lost. But he left during the second half of the presidency because he told Bush the same thing he told Bush's daddy. Hey, if you go in there, you break it, you bought it. And his daddy was smart enough to say, okay, we won't go in there. We'll just leave them alone, right? We'll mess up their infrastructure and stuff, but we'll leave them alone, right? But Bush said, oh no, we're gonna go in there and we're gonna take credit for it, and we're gonna say that this is an American place we can have a base and all those things. And so guess what? He did it, and he's told. And Colin Powell said, I didn't want to go in there, but then he said, look, they got weapons of mass destruction. He lied to him, and that's why Condoleezza Rice got the promotion she did, because Condoleezza Rice was willing to go ahead and stay in there, knowing that it was BS from the beginning. Colin Powell was mad because he thought that he actually thought they had um, nuclear weapons. Then you go into Obama. I don't even know how much more like Obama. We just say because he's black, he could do whatever he wanted, even though he's not the first black president by far. But we kind of just did that. We forgot Obama just basically said he wasn't going to do anything for black people. Remember, he was asked, "What are you going to do for black and white people?" He said, "I'm not the black president. I'm not the white president. I'm the president," which means he ain't doing nothing for you. Then he had more people in prisons and in cages than Trump did. When you talk about what happened on the border, of Mexican border, he had more people in cages than Trump did, but we just omit that. Don't forget that Obama was getting in trouble. Remember, even CNN, even people that supported him were coming out and saying, "Yo, you going crazy with these drones? Stop bombing everybody. Like women and children are dying." And I don't even think he ever really fully addressed the drones. I can't remember him really doing a press conference where he just talked about why all the men and women that were dying. But we just let that go. We let go of the fact that Michelle Obama was on the Ellen DeGeneres show dancing and talking about how healthy our children need to be, and then meanwhile he was signing legislation to make sure that GMOs could be able to do way more than they ever had before, even way more than what Bush signed off on. Yeah, we talked about that before. The presidents are coming from George Washington. That's why I said not by far, right? Because even after George Washington, you still have to admit Eisenhower and Lincoln bare minimum, and then you can go to the couple before Washington. So thank you for that. Yeah, right. But he never addressed it. You know why he never addressed it? Because once again, lesser of two evils. Well, he black, so he less evil than that person. He's the same family, same blood. But we made that mistake, right? Then you get to we only got two more left, and then we take our lead. Thank you so much for being on today. We had Trump, right? Trump came on. Trump just continued the same thing on the border. Everybody's acting like he did something new. Trump just continued to do the same thing that Obama was doing on the border. And Trump this time, instead of saying outright they're super predators or this and that, he just said outright, like, hey, like he said there's no problem with them boys out there. He said there's no problem with these tiki torch guys. He said like they're Americans like everybody else. He said white people go through the same struggles that black people do. He gave pardons to people just like Obama did. I mean, everybody was okay with it. Like it's really weird. People don't Trump giving pardons to Lil Wayne and people like that. And did he do Uzi Vert? Did he do Uzi Vert too? Was that the other one? Everybody's okay with everybody mad at Trump for doing that or whatever. But Ellen DeGeneres got a medal of freedom, was it, or whatever the highest medal it is that you can get as a civilian. She got it, and what did she get it for? Because she came out. It's Kodak Black. Thank you. I mean, what was the? That's what you get the Medal of Freedom for. No wonder Black Lives Matter came in and did whatever they wanted, right? But Trump, like people had no problem with it. Trump really didn't even need to do much. Trump's whole thing was to make sure that evangelicals got whatever they wanted. Like I think everybody misses the boat with Trump. Trump was not here to try and change. Trump was here to make sure that white, rich Christian evangelicals were able to get whatever they wanted. That was his domestic thing. His foreign policy was basically to say like, we're not, we're dealing in business again. He opened up the floodgates for business. Obama, he opened up the floodgates for business. He went over to Africa. He said, hey, we want you guys to go ahead and give us our stuff, start giving us stuff again. Let us come back in and take over your stuff because, hey, everybody else is taking over. You're letting India take over. You're letting China take over. You're letting, some of these Eurocentric countries back in. You're letting Germany dictate to you what you can and can't do. Hey, we want to come over and get some of that money too. That's what Obama was there for. That was his foreign thing, his domestic thing, LGBTQ plus, right? Trump continued this. Trump's foreign thing was, hey, make sure that we open for business and we tell everybody we don't care what your stance is. We just trying to make money out here in these streets again. And by the way, on the domestic side, hey, white people, you need power back. And hey, so if you're a white Christian evangelical male, we're gonna make sure that happens. And people got so into fighting each other that you missed that was his whole deal with the people that put him in power. And you started saying black men ain't nothing, black men ain't nothing, black women ain't nothing, and started fighting each other. When the reality was is that it was somebody way above y'all, way above Trump. Believe it or not, there's people above Trump's pay grade, and he had to do what he was told. Now he could fight back more than anybody else. That's why he is probably the most upfront. He's actually probably the most honest president. Believe it or not, Trump is probably the most honest president you've ever had or seen. Like real talk, he's probably the most honest one you've ever had. He told you stuff outright. He just like yeah, Proud Boys. Ain't nothing wrong with them. I don't know why we're trying to say alt right, this and that or whatever. What's wrong with alt right? Like he just told you straight up. I don't know why you guys are mad about taxes. Like I do what I'm supposed to do with my taxes. Like I make sure that my stuff is written up correctly. I make sure that I've got money to move. I make sure that I do this. The same thing y'all could do. Y'all just don't know how to do it. Why are you mad at me for doing the same thing y'all could do? Y'all got mad at him. He was telling you the truth. I'd rather have Trump in office than some of these cats in office. Now, Biden is the same person that called you a super predator. Biden is the same person that said that he'd rather you not have any money. Biden is the person that said that y'all black people are trying to take too much from everybody. Biden's the one that said if you don't vote for him, then you ain't black. Biden's the one that said that you don't have any history, unlike Spanish people or Latin people, even though Latinos, y negros, we are what? We are brothers. We are sisters. Hermosa, familia. That's who we are. Or hermoso, excuse me. Right? Perdóname. Like we are the same. Biden out here telling you lies. Biden out here, Biden's he did a funeral for him not too long ago. And when I say not too long ago, I mean, relatively speaking, within last 10 years or so probably. But he did a funeral for his mentor. His mentor was somebody who was a Democratic KKK member who was he Democrat or Republican? It might have been a party switch. I feel like he was a Democrat who was a KKK member though. Matter of fact, there's a famous video in which not JFK but RFK actually breaks him down and shakes him and makes him look foolish for some of his racist rhetoric. But Biden's mentor was a KKK member. But ain't nobody talking about that. When what's her face? Because it was going to be a white woman that was going to run for vice president, who's the governor of, before she got in trouble because of what she did that allowed the police officer who killed George Floyd to be around. But the governor of Minnesota, she was going to run as vice president, and then she got caught in that, so they brought you guys and forgive me, I don't pay enough attention to politics, so I don't Kamala or Camilla, Kamala, right? Kamala, right? And so Kamala here is they brought her up, right? And then they had her. What was it? Oh yeah, remember Kamala was telling you when she was running how racist Joe Biden was. All of a sudden she ran with them though, and then when they made it, she said, "We did it, Joe." But go back when she was running for president, and when she was running for president, there was a Latina woman, I believe, and she came out and she was like, "Yo, you know that she was out here locking up black people, and she was locking up people who just because their children wanted to go to different schools, and she was out here doing some of the same racist rhetoric." But y'all think because she can go like this, I believe, right? Isn't that the sign that they do in her sorority? Because she can go like this, and because she says Wakanda forever, she started doing that when the movie came out, and because she went to a HBCU, that means that she cares about you, and that's called politics, right? Which is why, once again, the definition of capitalism is what? When politics and economics are used to control trade and industry, that trade and industry is wielded by private corporations and not the state or not the government. That being said, thank you so much. I appreciate you all. We usually go a little longer on Sundays. I've gone a lot longer. I've been on here just about 4 hours, so I'm going to go ahead and take my leave. It's family day, so we're going to get ready to get on the road. I appreciate your presence, though. Thank you so much. We appreciate your sitting back. We appreciate your honesty. And please, honestly, don't believe me just because I said it. Take all the stuff we're saying, go on the YouTube channel, review it, whatever you need to. But go look up these things that I'm talking about, right? Look it up on Google, go to libraries, read books on them, do whatever you need. And when you discover, look up the people we talked about, Noam Chomsky, look up look up what happened in Nicaragua. Look up what happened with Noriega. Look up what happened with Saddam Hussein. Look up what happened with Eisenhower. Look up what happened in Indonesia. By the way, find some books and things from people from the other side. Find some people that are Indonesian that will tell you the same stuff and see what they have to say. Right? Find some people that are Vietnamese and see what they have to say, right? And see what works out. But we thank you. We appreciate you. We honor you. Please check out stuff. All you got to do, if you're on TikTok, if you're on YouTube, just wait a little bit. We'll make sure the stuff is put in the description box. I've been trying to upload stuff on the YouTube, by the way. The couple days that we had issue where we couldn't put YouTube up at all. The problem seems to be that, and forgive me for that, the problem seems to be that, uh, like, it's not even letting me take the stuff off of TikTok, which is weird. You're supposed to be able to download your own stuff off of TikTok. So I apologize about that, but we'll try to make that stuff work. Remember, October 14th through 16th in Detroit is right around the corner. So if you want to join us for that, we need the donations by August 15th, which is right around the corner. Please, ma'am, please, sir. Remember, we're going to have to change some of the dates up a little bit, but we still plan on being in South Carolina, DMV area, possibly Philly, North Carolina, possibly St. Louis, Houston, and and San Fran. So because of stuff, the expenses went up a little bit. So that's why we're gonna have to change some of the stuff. Gonna have to do some things as far as rental vehicle and some things rather than our vehicle, just to make sure that everything's going to happen and be safe and different things financially, since this is basically going to be coming out of pocket. So just giving you guys a heads up. But we will, whatever dates have to change, whatever things have to be moved around, we'll make sure we give it to you ASAP. My goal is to try and have you guys know today. So hopefully at some point, if you are in Houston or some area, or whatever area I mentioned, right, please make sure you reach out to us. That's another thing. We don't have everybody's information. So if I don't have your email, if I don't have the number, if we haven't DM'd each other, if you don't let us know, we might not know, right? So just let us know in advance. We got to know that you're there, right? So we got to know, we got to know. And we have a little bit more time now before we leave, because honestly, we were supposed to leave like around Monday. One of the things that I was going to be doing as far as speaking to children it looks like that might not happen on Tuesday. So we probably have a little bit more time, and then might even wait a little bit more since the financial thing is coming to where we might have to do the rental car. So yeah, so it's a little more time, but just let us know ASAP. I'd hate to come through and it'd be like, yo, we were in the DMV, or to make it easy, we came in between Baltimore and the DMV, and we went to a place where there was a train station and everything, and like nobody said that they were gonna come. So or hey, we were in H Town. We've been saying, we sent out the dates to everybody who reached out, but nobody looked at the dates and told us. So we was in H Town, but we missed you. Or hey, we was over in North Carolina, and we even tried to see about some things. Or at least bare minimum look over the land if we weren't able to plant anything and do whatever, and nobody was there, right? Like so. What I'm saying is like reach out to us, let us know, like put it in the live and in the chat. I try to get back to you guys, but I promise you it's really difficult for me to be able to do, especially when the DMs and looking at the list and how many things I get. So, but at least DM me, or at least make sure that if you're on TikTok, if you're on YouTube, just look for videos, and the videos get updated in the description box where you can see all the ways to reach out to us. If you're on TikTok, take time out, go to our TikTok page, go past where it says info, look where it says website, click on that link. That's our link tree. As soon as you click on that link tree, it'll give you a bunch of different places you can go to get in contact with us. Please help us out. We're in the midst. We had some people, just a few, but we had a few people that are starting to try and help us to do some stuff as far as the fundraising stuff. You don't have to send anything to anybody. You don't have to get anything physically. All you got to do is ask people about it, show people that you can send them the link. And matter of fact, I think you can even give them I always forget what the little square thing is, the XR code, is it? Whatever that is. You can even show them that once you get online, and give them the code. Once you give them the code, right, like you in there, like you give them that code, and they can go ahead and get that stuff done, right? So they can go ahead and do what they need to do. You can help us to get towards this land. We didn't have enough people, or so far we haven't had as many people that said they were going to help us with the land to get there. But our goal is still to try and get something by October, or bare minimum have enough to where we can put a pretty nice chunk down on something, right? So the QR code, thank you. So there's different ways you can help us to be able to obtain stuff. We're trying to do stuff we're talking about, but I learned a long time ago that I'm not going to blame myself. I can only hold myself accountable for what I do, right? So if we're putting this stuff together, if we're trying to get people to help out, if we're trying to make sure that people doing project management, if we got people that are willing to donate time, talent, effort, energy, and yes, some people even donate prayers and donations and often, and some of you even do tithes and stuff. We appreciate you all, right? But we need help. I'm just letting you know. And we're trying to make sure we continue the mission, which is to change lives one mind at a time by being a voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. Once again, study this message, pray about it, fast, do whatever you do so you can not only be hearers, but you can be doers as well. And we are thankful and super grateful to each and every one of you for spending some time today. We're on every day at 8 a.m. Eastern New York time. We're on every weeknight at 8 p.m. Eastern New York time, except for Wednesdays. Wednesdays is my day off. Even though we still do have things that you can check in with some of our other staff who can teach and preach and stuff as well. So we thank you, though. We honor you. We appreciate the King, Queen, and each and every one of you. I can't stress enough how much of an honor it is to be able to use my gift and hopefully just do something that helps you and blesses you. Because we know it's better to give than it is to receive. And when I receive, then I can receive, right? So thank you again. We appreciate you. We honor you guys. And we look forward to talking to you very soon. Please, once again, check out my wife, the Honorable Amma, who lives a life that's able to be honored. You can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A and D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. So subtract that A, subtract that D, Bloom and Flourish. She's a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. And she has many different tinctures and teas and things that help with healing, even copper cups, things of that nature that people are interested in. The main tincture of the month is I Beat Diabetes. So if you'd like to be able to find out more info about that, get in touch with us. Check out our YouTube page. Check out our podcast. Check out we're about to start doing Tassel stuff. Check out the music. The music stuff is actually getting loaded up slowly but surely. Finally got the copyright and everything 100% done. Check out, we got people that do shirts and things like that, and they work with us to where you can make sure you support their business, and they give us a little bit for us being the people helping them. So there's different things that we have. Check out tons of different things. So we appreciate you, we honor you, and we look forward to talking to you guys very soon. And we even have a place where we have each other's businesses on there, so you can support each other's businesses. You don't even have to go to other people. You can actually support the diaspora by just supporting businesses that we have and the different things that people do. So it's all there. Check out the website. Check out all that stuff. Once again, check out our link tree. Go on there. Check out the website for yourself. Look where it says Our Black Book. We'll have a list of classes coming up soon. Matter of fact, you guys tell me what classes you're interested in. I'll have a list of classes I start telling you guys next week, and then after that, I guess at the end of the week, we'll make a decision on which classes. But I know for sure y'all want Sovereignty 1 to come back. We'll probably bring back Sovereignty 2. I know we have, it depends on how many people. We've been doing Hebrew characters each time for a while. I My wife is talking about bringing back something with natural medicine, but I'm not sure which natural medicine class it is yet. So that's 4 out of, usually we do 5 to 6. So we could bring back Black history. We could bring back a little bit of Hebrew language. Matter of fact, those who took Hebrew language, we're probably going to start doing some little things once in a while to where we just get together and speak, so we can practice with each other. But yeah, so we have things like that. I mean, we have marriage classes, but I haven't really heard too many people this time talk about marriage. But whatever you guys want to talk about, we'll see if we have a class for it or see if it's something we can develop a curriculum for. But yeah, you know, we appreciate it. We honor you. We thank you. And we look forward to talking with you guys very soon. Yeah, bloom and flourish, exactly. So thank you. We appreciate you. Have a great day. Go out there, do well, be successful, and come out of a system that says that you have to act like everybody else. You don't have to. You don't have to be part of something that's wicked. You don't have to be part of something that's chaotic. There's so much more for us to do rather than continue to be force-fed lies over and over and over and over again. And prayerfully, you'll make a decision that you'll choose ye this day whom you shall serve. Will you serve Jehovah, who's about making sure that you would have life and have more as far as more as far as have abundance? Or are you looking forward to having somebody keep stealing, taking from you, and even stealing the knowledge of yourself? Anyways, we thank you, we appreciate you, we honor you, and we look forward to talking to you guys soon. As always, this is Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant to Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time by being a voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken until I have the great privilege, opportunity, and responsibility of being in front of you all again. Please remember, as always, Yashtel, that you are loved, you're necessary, you're majestic, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. Shalom, family.